Hello, welcome to our Tuesday evening council meeting. I appreciate everyone being here. We're going to kick things off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll be led by Don Robitaille.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who's got recent? Does anyone have recent? Do we have? No one has recent? Nobody? Madam Clerk, I believe we're ready to begin.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Councilor of Ward 6.
And I see we have the minutes from September 5.
Yes, sir.
A motion to accept the minutes. Councilor McCarthy, second by Councilor Pease. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Abstain. Yes.
I'm sorry, I skipped Ward 7, I apologize.
Oh, did I say? Oh, you said 1, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, so Ward 6 was a yes, I apologize.
I'm abstaining because I was absent.
Thank you very much. Councilor from Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
We are now up to public comment period. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. This period is reserved for non-agenda items. Public comment is also allowed during individual agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record and please indicate if you are a Lewiston resident. Because this is the business meeting of the City Council, all questions should be directed to the mayor, who will ask staff to follow up at a future time. It is illegal for the City Council to allow comments related to personnel matters. All personnel complaints should be made directly to the City Administration Office. If there's public comment, please make your way to the podium at this time.
My name is Peg Hoffman. I live at 2 Clare Street in Lewiston, Maine. I'm a member of Trinity Episcopal Church on Kennedy Park. We continue to be profoundly concerned for our neighbors who are unhoused. We understand there are a number of persons who are sleeping rough who will say that they are content to be so. But we believe that if the wraparound resources they truly need were available without barriers, the majority of the most vulnerable individuals would say yes to that kind of shelter. There are models of care in other cities that have brought folks inside who've been homeless for a long time, and 2 years later, not one unit of that housing has been surrendered. The cost of homelessness in cities like Lewiston can be $70,000 a year for each person in need. That's our money being ineffectively spent for the most expensive physical and mental health treatment in emergency rooms, 3 to 4 ambulance transports a month, repeated engagement with law enforcement, and more and more. The cost of the good models of care for each person in need is cut in half, $36,000. We admit, still costly for us to fund alone as a city. You as our representatives, and we as well, should be demanding every day that state and federal dollars be allocated to help implement the solutions that have been shown to work. You need to allocate city administrative resources in the pursuit of those solutions, and you need to stop putting up more barriers to those solutions. The most important reason to do something is because while we do nothing, the cost in human misery is rising. We see it every day in Lewiston now, more and more, and the need will not go away. Nelson Mandela said, "Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity, it is an act of justice." The reasons people are living on our streets are not just about them making poor choices. There are ways in which we as a community have failed to prevent and to remedy the ways in which any of us could become vulnerable. We are reaping the results of those failures. You can turn that around. Tell us how we can help you.
Good evening. I'm Billie Jane Cook, owner of the Agora Grand Event Center in the Inn at the Agora in the 5th Ward, where I also live. In the past 2 years, our city council has chosen to ignore the growing problem of housing insecurity in my neighborhood, which is now spread citywide thanks to the majority vote enabling this to be ignored. Inn reviews have shifted from including sketchy neighborhood to now including horrible town. Obviously, having investment in Lewiston and growing our tax base is a great goal, but we're struggling to attract investment due to the poor first impression of our entire city. Thinking outside of the box for solutions and addressing root cause is what must occur. An incident last year involved a woman who required significant emergency response on my property after she was found without a pulse and her lips were already turning blue. I'd also like to note that it did not appear to be an overdose, but a homeless person in poor health. This incident likely cost taxpayers, in a conservative estimate, well over $20,000, based on the massive first responder response I saw, well over a dozen, and advanced medical intervention required. I know they got a pulse back, but I assume that she either died later that day or requires lifelong care to the damage from the oxygen loss. Again, at taxpayer expense. This scenario is not isolated, and similar incidents happen regularly, costing taxpayers every time. The reality is that it is more frequent than that, and the tax dollar spent is much higher. If it is once a week at $20,000 a pop, then we easily have spent over $1 million a year in taxpayer dollars at local, state, and federal levels to basically do nothing to prevent it from continuing to occur. Now imagine if we took that money that was spent on the ignored problem that causes an emergency response, and instead we were proactive and spent it on getting these folks housed in facilities that also provide the resources needed to help them get their lives back on track. Suddenly we have found the money to put the resources in place that our city so desperately needs, and guess what else happens? The city becomes better, and that increased tax base from investment can become reality. The choices that are currently being made to ignore it are costing us far more than if we address the issues. Costs don't just include hard dollars. They include the opportunity cost of not changing things to prevent it in the future. If we redirect this money to proactive solutions such as housing and rehabilitation for those in need, we not only address the problem but also create a better city. Ignoring these issues is more costly in both dollars and missed opportunities for our future. You cannot continue to ignore an issue that is only spreading, and you cannot solve investment and growth without addressing the issues directly causing investment and growth to not happen. Housing and safety are the two core issues that must be addressed before growth and economic prosperity can happen again for Lewiston. It's okay that we have a win-win solution. There doesn't have to be a loser.
Further public comment?
Hello, my name is Dominic Dastra. I live in Ward 5 and I'm a junior at Lewiston High School. I have compassion for the homeless because many of them have been put into their situation by things that fall on the responsibility of government. For example, the rising cost of living. Take away emotion though, and I still don't see how anyone can't understand the severity of the situation, especially after last week when there were pictures of an encampment with drug paraphernalia that was set up in the woods behind Connors and my high school. With that being said though, it's important to remember, not all homeless are drug addicts. Not all homeless are criminals. But most of them at one point or another were simply just citizens. I'm not disparaging them, I'm just saying that they always have a new label attached, homeless. The problem with being homeless is the stigma that comes with it. Lazy, dirty, violent, addict, scammer are just a few of the many words that comes to mind. But this just isn't true, and in the few cases that it is, it's important to look at what has led them to that point. For most, they've been backed into a corner because of governmental failure and issues out of their control. Before I finish, I'd just like to say what has driven me to do this tonight. I've been in Lewiston for 6 years, and I've seen this go from a small problem to what it is now. where my family has to pick needles out of the bushes and clean up encampments on our property. The growth of the problem made me wonder, are the decisions being made driven by personal biases and maybe because of a NIMBY mentality, or are they truly in the best interest of the city and its people? Finally, I urge you to take action, hopefully with compassion, but if not, out of fear. Fear that the situation will only continue to get worse. No, you can't ignore it, and yes, unless change happens, it will grow. Thank you.
Further public comment? Public comment is now closed. Madam Clerk, I believe you have a consent agenda.
We do. There are 3 items on the consent agenda this evening, Mr. Mayor. Item number 1, adoption of city council meeting schedule for January 2024. Number 2, approval of election warrant calling for the municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, and recommendations from the city clerk, registrar of voters on actions necessary to conduct the municipal and state election November 7th, 2023. And item number 3, order authorizing the execution of municipal quitclaim deed for real estate located at 52 O'Connell Street.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Pease, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a Guy Gagnon in the audience? Okay. And if it pleases the council, I would like to move up agenda item number 14 to consider his appointment. This meeting will be potentially a little long this evening, and since he is here, I would like to do that. No, I think we're good. I think we're moving to item number 14.
Sure, okay, yeah. Item number 14, appointment to the Lewiston Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. Requested action to confirm the mayor's nomination and to appoint the following resident as a member of the Board of Commissioners of the Lewiston Housing Authority. Guy Gagnon, 15 Nelke Place, term to expire September 17th, 2028, citizen representative.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor Pease,
Second?
seconded by Councilor Jelinas. Discussion? Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will abstain from this vote tonight. I've spoken with the administrator about this. We do not get the full application prior to the meeting. The application has got redacted information on it. If we want to contact the individual with any questions, I don't know enough about the individual that I feel that I can vote one way or the other. I don't want to deny him the position, but by the same token, I don't want to grant the position either on those grounds. Thank you.
I guess my advice to the council is if there are questions, we do have a guy in the audience this evening and could potentially answer questions. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. So I will fully be supporting Mr. Gagnon to be appointed to this position. He's a neighbor of mine. He reached out to me. I greatly appreciated him reaching out and asking me if I had any questions. I did not, but I look forward to him continuing in this role and supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Did you have any specific questions, Councilor?
No, sir. No,
Clement?
I would like to be able to view this information ahead of the meeting. I think all appointments should appear before the council the night of their appointment. I'm glad that he's here, but I would like to have an opportunity to view the information ahead of time.
Thank you.
Nothing personal against the individual whatsoever. I just think that that's something we should be doing. All appointees should appear in person before the council. We can vet them at that time, but we should have, perhaps the clerk can send us the information that's redacted in the public packet via an email or something like that. That would be most helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing that I thought was required of these applications, maybe not, but their employment, so that we know what their background is. This application, you know, I don't know the gentleman. He may be a wonderful man, but this doesn't give us any context on what his background is, to whether it relates to being on the committee or not. So I don't understand why that isn't on there, but if I'm mistaken, so be it. But I think that that's pertinent information before we vote for someone. I don't know if the gentleman wants to share his background with us so that we have more information.
Do you mind coming to the podium, Mr. Gagnon? Thank you.
I've actually was on the Economic Growth Council for about 35 years. I was on the Loan Committee for the Economic Growth Council. I've spent a 40-year career in the property and casualty insurance business and pretty much lived in Lewiston pretty much my entire life.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's
welcome.
great news.
Further comments or questions from the council? Yes, I appreciate your service, Mr. Gagnon. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 6,
I'll pass.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
and Counselor from Ward 6.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
And now we are back to, if I'm not mistaken, agenda item number 4, Madam Clerk.
Yes. Item number 4, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Carriage House Plus, 1119 Lisbon Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Carriage House Plus, 1119 Lisbon Street.
So
I
moved.
have Counselor Clement, followed by Counselor Jelinas. And discussion. Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Madam Clerk, item number 5.
Item number 5, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Acme Social Club Incorporated, 255 Park Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Acme Social Club Incorporated, 255 Park Street.
May I have a motion, please? Counselor Pease, second by Counselor Harriman. Discussion? Public comment? This is just a random question. Does anyone know how long the Acme Social Club has been there? Really?
70 years?
Forever.
80 years? Yeah. How long has Park Street been there?
Further discussion from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 6.
Item number 6, public hearing on an application for a business license renewal for Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated for an outpatient addiction treatment clinic at 18 Mollison Way. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item, to conduct a public hearing to receive citizen input and comment regarding the application submitted by Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated for renewal of their business license to operate an outpatient addiction treatment clinic at 18 Mollison Way, Lewiston.
And so now the public hearing is now open. If somebody would like to comment on this agenda item, please come up to the podium. Public hearing is now closed. Madam Clerk, the next item,
Sure, the motion before you to.
or next, yes.
Sure, to approve the license for an outpatient addiction treatment clinic for Merrimack River Medical Services Incorporated to operate a clinic at 18 Mollison Way, Lewiston, subject to the attached conditions.
So moved.
Counselor Jelinas, second by Counselor, I believe, McCarthy. Discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 7.
Item number 7, public hearing and first passage to contractually rezone the properties at 128 Farwell Street and 255 East Avenue from the Neighborhood Conservation A zoning district to a contract zone to allow greater housing options and limited commercial uses. Requested action that the proposed amendment to Appendix A excuse me, of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 4, Establishment of Districts, for a contract zone located at 128 Farwell Street and 255 East Avenue from Neighborhood Conservation A zoning district to a contract zone with the limitations as proposed, receive first passage by a roll call vote, and that the public hearing on said ordinance amendment be continued to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Counselor P, second by Counselor LaChapelle. If you can make your way to the front, Director Hediger. Are you going to be at the podium today?
I'm going to be right here, right now.
Okay.
So the council may recall this item was discussed, over a year ago now, where it was suggested that it go back as a contract rezoning if the property owner was interested in pursuing that. So the property owner is GRE LLC, and we've been working with them in drafting a contract zone that you folks have before you tonight. Planning board did consider this last week. They voted 7-0 on it. There are a number of conditions in here that differ from last time. Specifically, the rezoning now allows for basically any type of residential development to occur there. The developers expressed interest from, I think, actually 2017 of doing multifamily out there of some sort, but the rezoning you have in front of you now allows basically any type of residential use that is currently allowed in Lewiston. It does allow non-residential uses too. Their intent is to potentially have non-residential uses that would be accessory to the multifamily dwelling out there. So if they wanted to have a hair salon, or maybe there's a small clinic or a cafe or something to that extent, certainly they can elaborate on that if there's more questions about that. It does increase the density out there. Right now it is zoned Neighborhood Conservation A. That is a single-family zoning district. This zoning would allow, again, multifamily development to occur, and it would also reduce the net lot area, so that would actually increase the density out there to 1 unit per 1,500 square feet. So it's approximately 11 acres out there, and if you could develop that entire lot out there, you could have maybe 64 single-family dwellings or 321 dwelling units, multifamily dwelling units. Whether you'd actually be able to do either one of those is debatable, because you're going to be making road improvements, stormwater improvements, open space requirements, things of that nature. They have asked for the height requirement to be increased to 75 feet. As I think you'll hear tonight, the thought with 75 feet is that is considerably higher than what otherwise would be allowed in the NCA zoning district. But the thought is that you'd actually be able to build a smaller footprint and go up instead, so you could provide more open space for the development and potentially have it further away from the residential properties. You'll remember that residential properties that were being primarily concerned was Charles Street and people on Farwell Street. So the thought is, if you build it taller, smaller footprint, push it away, more open space, yes, it will be taller, but you'll be taking up less of the land with the development out there. There's some additional requirements with respect to setbacks out there. Setbacks are normally in the NCA anywhere from 10 to 20 feet. In this case, the setback would be 45 feet along the Charles Street properties and 40 feet along Farwell Street. Again, the developer might be further, but that's the closest that they could get to either one of those property lines. You do have a chart in there that gives you all the comparisons of what exists, what's proposed, so you can have a full understanding of the different requirements there. Traffic was a concern. You folks may recall that the city did some traffic analysis out there, kind of a high-level traffic analysis to figure out what exists for issues out there today. It's acknowledged that there are issues that exist out there today. No one's going to dismiss that. Primarily in the afternoon, it backs up on Farwell Street. You'll also see from the traffic analysis in here, there's just a lot of traffic that uses that street as a bypass. That was discussed during a workshop at one point with you folks. I mean, part of it is just the design of the city. Russell Street just empties out into this intersection here, and people continue across onto Farwell, and then it's a primary route if you're coming down Webster Street, if you're coming from Alfred Plourde or the Turnpike. You look at the numbers here, hundreds of cars are making a right onto Farwell Street. They're not continuing down Webster Street, they're making a right. Never mind what this development might contribute to the traffic out there. They will contribute traffic. No one's dismissing that either. They will need some type of traffic analysis to go through the process out there. They will have to do potentially mitigation out there. What specifically will have to be done, we don't know at this point. We do know that there's issues at certain intersections from the analysis that was provided out there. It's timing of the signals might need to be looked at. There's some striping things that we could do out there potentially to address concerns today. One of them is particularly the intersection of Farwell and Sabata Street. Those that are familiar with it, if you're trying to cross over Sabata Street, it's only one lane going across, and the right lane is designated as a right turn lane. Potentially, if we made that a right and a through lane, you'd have that much more traffic going across Russell Street. Again, when you look at the traffic counts, it's a fraction of the number of cars are actually turning up Sabata Street. Everybody's going across Russell Street. Everybody's going towards Main Street in Auburn. So it's things like that that there may be some low-hanging fruit out there that the city might want to explore regardless. We talked about pedestrian crossings, rapid flashing beacons and whatnot. My understanding is Public Works has a set of those that we could potentially put up on Farwell Street just to improve pedestrian access out there as well. Again, those are things that will do minimal improvements to the existing conditions out there. Any development of this lot will have some traffic impact, and they'll have to speak to that in more detail through a development review process that goes before the planning board. I know that sometimes comes up with the council as to what your role would be after this, if this is successful. You wouldn't necessarily have a role. Then it would be then transferred over to the planning board like any other project subject to development review, where they look at traffic, setbacks, just stormwater, things of that nature. We did have some public comment at the planning board. It was, again, some of it was about traffic, some of it was about just not wanting to see development of that nature in their neighborhood, concerns with the height of the structure, maybe the number of units. There was some question about whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan as well. I've tried to attempt to address those comments in your packets tonight, and I can go into those with more detail if you folks want, but staff remains of the opinion that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan out there as an area that's designated for growth. I don't know that I have any more comments for you folks at this point. Certainly Mr. Gendron and his consultant are here on behalf of the project as well, and I'm sure they have things to add that I may have not addressed.
Thank you, Director Hedegaard. Discussion from the council. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So you said as far as the setbacks that are in this contract zone that the planning board approved, you said 45 feet to the property line of the Charles Street abutters?
Correct.
And then 40 feet to Farwell Street?
Correct.
Are there any homes on Farwell Street though, or on that side of Farwell Street, what would the 40 feet be?
Just from the property line itself, so there's no, you're right that there's no properties on Farwell Street. They own right up to it. They have a lot of frontage there, but there's certainly homes on the opposite side of Farwell Street too. So instead of building, 10, 20 feet to that property line, they would be further set back.
Okay, so they'd have to build 40 feet from their own property line?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. And then my other question was about the traffic. Do you happen to know if that street is a state aid street, or if we can make larger changes to it? Because, I'll let you answer it.
I don't know off the top of my head
Okay.
if that's a state aid.
Because I was just thinking, one thing we could potentially do is, if the state allows it, would be to sort of turn Farwell Street into a neighborhood street, tighten up all the turn radiuses, all the intersections, put speed tables in, narrow the travel lanes, put a bunch of street trees in, so that it's really inconvenient for people to use it as a shortcut from Webster to Sabata Street, and just try to drive everybody who's going through down to East Ave, which is really the big road that they should be using instead of cutting through Farwell. Just a thought, if that's something, I know the state doesn't like some of those things on their own roads, and so I don't know if we can do it on Farwell Street.
I can certainly find out for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion from the council? Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Hedegaard, Didn't the state at one time try to run a road through at the end of Alfred Floyd Parkway to cut all the way across and go into Sabattis? Was it because it was too expensive, or why did they stop?
Garceland Bog. So the city has over 100 acres of wetlands, basically between Sabattis Street and Webster Street there. And as I understand, there was a advisory committee that was put together through the council at that time, lots of neighborhood involvement. I'm sure cost was a factor as well, but at the end of the day, it was environmental issues that kept that connectivity from going. But that was the plan. Alfred Plourde was going to connect all the way over to Russell Street.
Okay, that would have been helpful.
It would have addressed this issue.
Thank you.
We're going to public comment for this agenda item.
Hello, I'm Chris LaChapelle, live at 120 Farwell Street, the very next house down from this lot. Just want to point out a couple things because I know my time's limited. They want to develop the lot for a wider range of housing, which is totally understandable. Big push for that in the city. It's great. It also is going to allow some limited commercial uses, none of which is really specified, which kind of brings me to the Highway National Transportation Board assessment that you guys kind of presented here. They did their trip generation off 199 trips, but if more than 200 trips are proposed, which is, you know, we're not sure what's going to go there, a full traffic evaluation by the applicant should be submitted before the new zoning will be considered. Just something in the paperwork here. It's like you consider a high volume generator such as a coffee shop. They're beyond the limits of the evaluation that we are presented today, and should be considered on a case-by-case basis. So with 200 trips or more proposed, which I think is probably likely, we maybe want to think about a little more of what might be developed on this property. Coming back to that, given the market fluctuations, when this lot may be developed is not certain. So we don't know if it's going to be housing. We don't know if it's going to be, you know, whatever's allowed in the community business zone with restrictions, which is something we really didn't want to begin with in the Farwell Street neighborhood. This is, in the comprehensive plan, considered an NCA district, which is exactly how it's zoned currently. Even though development would be great, I think what you're allowing is over tripling the amount of density in the space per acre. The Martel building that's going on here that you guys probably will see, or at least the planning board committee, was only double. So we're talking a significant amount and on top of that in density for what is a quiet neighborhood. This won't affect me as much as probably the people on Charles Street and people on Farwell Street, but the density of the traffic, the density of the acreage, it's just going to be an overwhelming amount for that area. The 75-foot structure height is a considerable height for the entire city. I can't think of too many buildings that are 6 stories or more anywhere. I've been driving around kind of paying more attention to that, and there's nothing like that in the current zoning district of either the community business zone that it's next to or the neighborhood conservation zone. And the setback, you know, I really appreciate the increased distance, but there's also talk of using Charles Street as a side road, which is something that we all, the last time this came up, heard that was a big concern from the neighbors. So that's something that's still on the table. Just make sure you're aware of that. And being 45 feet really doesn't change the fact that if a 75-foot building could, you know, cast shadows on most of the houses on Charles Street, probably even mine across Charles Street on the corner of Farwell. So just think.
That's time. Thank you. Further public comment?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, my name is Mike Gatto. I'm here tonight to represent GRE. Dave Gendron is sitting behind us in the front row. When staff came to us and asked us to prepare the things that we would like to see in the proposed contract zone, since you folks had looked at the CB district back last year, we looked at the uses and we compared those uses as to the housing things that we wanted to do, but also some of the business activities. so that we could make sure that this site was developable and we could make it economically work. So we did pick the CB district as the one that we were looking for. We felt it was consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that's the way we moved forward with the contract zone. We did ask, as Dave said, to decrease the density from 5,000 to 1,500 square feet, which would allow 321 units, and again, Dave said the 75-foot height. As to traffic, I was happy that the council expended funds to do a traffic study. As a consultant, I look at a lot of these studies and I see a lot of activity with them. And the traffic is a problem, as the neighbor said it was. So we think that this project, which could bring $45 to $60 million worth of investment to the site, could help cover the improvements that are necessary for this project. With that, I think we can be here to answer any questions you might have about specifics. With the traffic situation, I have told the planning board and told staff that eliminating access rights to Charles Street would be problematic for this project. The traffic study suggests that access to East Avenue could be difficult, that access to Firewall Street could be difficult. I think that it's possible that a emergency access way on Charles Street might be necessary, but until we get into the specific designs and other things that the full traffic study will do as we go through this project and development review, we need to keep the options open to be able to have an access way there. With that, it's a short summary, and I see I'm running out of time, but if you have more questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Thank you. We will continue with the public comment portion of this agenda item, and then if there are questions, you can answer them at that time. Further public comment for this agenda item? And back to the council. Discussion and questions. Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is tough. I have not heard any constituent support for this proposed rezoning. Folks that have reached out to me, I've not, again, heard, support. More concern regarding, the density, concerning traffic, those sorts of things. That being said, we're in desperate need of housing. I mean, all types of housing, housing for seniors, housing for the unhoused, housing for, market rate housing, subsidized, all of it. So, that's important. I appreciate, on the one hand, I appreciate the work that you did to sort of reduce that footprint, if you will. But that being said, 75 feet is 6 stories, is that correct? 6-story, okay. And I guess my other thought that's just rumbling around in my mind is, again, appreciative of the traffic study for sure, but looking at some of the mitigation that might have to occur as a result of the increased traffic density is going to be important for us moving forward. I appreciate the comments from my colleague, Councilor Harriman, around trying to do what we can for folks that are residing right on that street. Because it is a quiet neighborhood, and I think this would significantly change that. I mean, there are times of the day when it's certainly busy, because it is used as a throughway, as you know. But thank you for explaining the project a little more.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. I would concur with Councilor Jelinas. I, too, have only heard folks reaching out to me to not want to see this happen. But I would also concur that housing in this community is in drastic need, every type of housing. And I don't think that any of us can repeat that enough, every type of housing. I do appreciate, I understand what's happening on the street. My grandson goes to Farwell School. I have to pick him up sometimes and drop him off. It's a mess. It's a mess. I appreciate the ideas that Councilor Harriman brought forward, and I would like to see if maybe that is something that we can definitely take a look at, if that's a feasibility. Because if we can get folks to use Webster Street to East Avenue instead of making that right-hand turn. That might eliminate a lot of this. I would also just ask that as this development may possibly move forward, that if there is any consideration with access to Charles Street, that it is only an emergency access, that would be a priority versus making that a regular access to the site. I can't make that decision for you, but I just ask that that be seriously considered, especially for the neighbors on Charles Street. I also would like to just reiterate that has been stated with the traffic study that, and I would just ask that Director Hediger confirm this, that specific site trip distribution and analysis will be required by the applicant to understand the full effect of the development. That has to happen once. This typically occurs upon the submittal of a development review application, where a more detailed analysis is provided by the applicant specific to the use being proposed. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there will be more study done on the traffic.
They'll have to do, at a minimum, some type of analysis, and if they generate 100 trips in a peak hour, then they need to do a full traffic study, and that looks at the immediate intersections of this property.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor McCarthy.
Excuse me, Director Hediger, I have another question.
I would like to say that at the beginning I offered you a chair, Director
Oh,
Hediger.
that's good. I've sit
He's a
all
young
day.
man, he can handle it. Question, who has to pay for any improvements to any of the roadways if this significantly impacts the amount of traffic and major reconstruction has to be done?
Typically, it's the developer.
Okay.
That's not to say that we haven't had joint development agreements in the past to offset improvements, but more often than not, it's the developer that's responsible for signal timing, maybe entering, turning lanes, things of that nature.
Okay, so he'll have some skin in the game then?
The developer will?
Yes.
Potentially, yes.
Yes, okay. I like the idea of this development. I understand the neighbors' concerns. No one wants to, when they have a nice field in their backyard, they don't want to see it disappear. On the flip side, Mr. Gendron has owned this property for a long time, and he's tried to do several developments that haven't gone through, mostly because the neighbors didn't want it. I think that Mr. Gendron is a major developer in this city. I don't know, I haven't heard of any negatives when it comes to any of the projects that he's done. I think that when this project is done, I think overall, people will be pleased. The housing that he's proposing is sorely needed. And I think the type of housing he's talking about, the people, it's more, I think he talked about 50 plus. So then you're not looking about the school getting overwhelmed with students. You're not looking about neighborhood, kids running around the neighborhoods and stuff like that. It's going to be more, singles or couples that are empty nesters. And I think this is a great spot for that type of housing, and I'm all for it. Thank you.
Councillor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Hediger, question for you. How many single-family homes could they put on that property currently, the way it sits? You said earlier in the presentation.
Yeah, I think there was 70, I think I said in there.
70.
64, excuse me.
64. With LD 2003, what does that bring that to?
Ooh, good question. Potentially. You're going to, at least in zones, there's a test for me, right? You're going to at least be able to do an accessory dwelling unit on every lot, and you could do a two-family on every lot. So you could double everything out there, and then if you can have accessory dwelling unit in addition to the two-family, that I'm not sure of. But you will be able to do duplexes on every single one of those lots.
So we have the potential of 180 units.
Keep in mind, that's correct. Keep in mind, you still have to take into consideration space and bulk standards.
Correct, but we have the potential for something like that.
If there was enough lot area on each one of those lots out there. I don't know, I mean, based upon the analysis that I
Correct.
did, that's probably a stretch to say it's gonna be double out there. But as you folks know, that's what LD 2003 allows you to do. Wherever you have a single family, you can make it into a two-family.
And that could be families, that could be the adverse impact to Farwell School if we had 180 units, 100 units have kids in there. That is a huge impact for the school. So thank you. I was just looking at the numbers. Mr. Gatto, just a quick question for you. We're talking about the 75-foot height. My understanding, you're going to have to dig down on that property. Is that, what are we looking at the site itself?
The site does have grade to it, and we are going to excavate. One of the reasons why I was looking for the 75-foot height is that one of the buildings we're looking at would have a basement-level parking garage. And if we do that, then the height is measured from the lowest point on the foundation at the grade. If you're accessing in the basement, then you have to count that as your height. And so that's one of the reasons we're asking for the height, is so that we could put the parking underground and, again, use the same footprint as the building, so they get more green space and put it closer to the highway. So we have done a lot of this type of development, and not this multifamily, but maximizing the site and making it work, and making it work for the neighbors.
It's fair to say that's going to be less impact on the neighborhood if you have less structure. The
Correct.
parking lot's not there, all of that.
And we have more green space and more buffering. And until we get into full design of a building and full design of a number of units, we won't know that. But if we can't get the zoning, this site has not been zoned, forever. And it could have been developed with Shaw's in the 80s and 90s. Instead, they moved down the street. And so without the zoning, the investment to do all the work that we need to do is too much money at the risk if it doesn't get zoned. So,
Excellent. Thank you. Director Hediger, I just thought of something else. I would concur with Councilor Scott. I would like to review this regardless of what happens tonight on the vote on the traffic study. That was our concern of this council back when we had the traffic study made. Regardless of what happens on that piece of property, there's a concern on the flow of traffic. And I think that's something that we need to look at and we need to address. Whether there is nothing there or whatever, that's something that's a problem with the city of Lewiston, and that's, I think we had a unanimous vote on this board to look at that traffic study. So I'd like to see this come back before us, and even if we're a year or two out, I have no idea what the timetable on this, but I think there can be some small things, relatively minor changes that we can make to help the flow of traffic. So if you could come back to us first of the year or whenever, I'd definitely like to see something like that happen. And following up, I'm pleased that Mr. Gendron and Mr. Gatto heard the concerns of a majority of the neighbors. It was evident at the planning department. It passed 7-0 from the planning board. I've had the pleasure of speaking to a lot of the people in that neighborhood, and the biggest concern is the not knowing. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want a Hoyt's Theater behind my place. I don't want anything like that. So the more information that's gotten out, they're saying, yes, we're looking at senior housing. Everyone, oh, phew, that's not a problem. And so there seems to be more understanding, and which is great, because once we rezone it, they still have to go through the planning process. So you still have the planning board, so some of these requirements are still going to be put on if there's a concern from neighbors on screening or whatever the case may be. So I want to thank Mr. Gendron for making the changes and adapting his plans to the neighborhood. And thank you for investing in Lewiston. We need more of Dave Gendron's, John Gendron's, and everybody else to make these changes in Lewiston. And this is not subsidized housing, correct? This is market housing? Market rate housing. Excellent. Yes, I'm definitely in favor of this project. Thank you.
Councillor Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those 3 words, market rate housing, music to my ears. Before Director Hediger goes off to sleep there leaning against the wall, a question for him. This project will go to the planning board irregardless. I mean, anything that's going in there, they have to approve.
Councillor Clement, if you could just speak into the mic, thank you.
Anything going in on this lot will have to be approved by the planning board if it's commercial or other than housing.
Any type of multifamily or commercial development, yeah, I mean, short of, some single-family homes out there, it's gonna require some level of development
So there'll
review.
be another level of review if this zoning is approved.
That's right, and we notify all the abutters of any development, anybody within 300 feet.
The traffic situation out there, I heard what Councilor from Ward 3 had to say, and I think we can do a lot less involved than that, having been involved in traffic a good portion of my life. I mean, there are things like no through street. We could prevent turning movements on Farwell Street. Speed tables, no, I can't go along with that. Your plow drivers will hate you forever. And you'll be paying for dental bills when their teeth get rattled loose when they hit one of those things at 30 miles an hour. But I think there are a lot of things we could do very inexpensively to remediate some of the traffic. I agree with the traffic study. Certainly, that has turned into something that it was never intended to be. So I would concur that we need to hear what the traffic study has to say. We should be able to ring on that, any future thing. And finally, I guess this would be to Mr. Gatto. If I heard you correctly, if you put an underground structure in for parking, the maximum height on that would be 5 stories from ground level. Is that correct?
We don't have an architectural design yet, but it could be 5. It might go to 6, but more likely it's going to be 5.
More likely 5, and a lot of our tenements in Lewiston now are 5 stories, correct? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Pease, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Going back to the LD 2023, as Councilman LaChapelle brought up, if they did develop into the homes, would that not change the setback requirements? Couldn't they go 15 feet from their property line?
Are you, with the rezoning in place, you're saying?
Yeah, if they develop it in the housing,
If they develop it without the rezoning, the setbacks are what they are today out there, in the NCA district. So it's 10 feet from the side and rear and 15 feet from the front.
okay, so the Charles Street benefits by having the development there, because it gives them 45 feet away from their property.
That's true. So if the rezoning went through and they still chose to do single-family dwellings out there, those larger setbacks would be in place.
Okay, thank you.
Director Hediger or Mr. Gatto, could you speak to the commercial development that would be out there? I know what hair salon was mentioned, small cafe, but how small is the cafe, and how many hair salons are there? If we could just have a little more info, or just I realize there are no plans yet, but just what are we thinking?
As I said earlier, we went down through the CB things, and we looked at things that might be able to be part of or accessory to a mixed multi-unit senior plus housing. Theater was, one floor could have a theater room, those kind of things that are multiple buildings, So we ended up putting in some of those uses to support the 55-plus senior housing project that the client wants to do. We have no specific plans for a retail use on that site, but we went down and we checked the box. If the economics don't work for a retail, for a senior housing project, then the site should still get developed at some point because it's one of the best developable sites in the city. So some of the retail uses, or, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but congregate care homes, you could go from an apartment to congregate care or nursing home, or those type of uses are all things that we check, just to see what kind of development this could actually become. I don't know if hopefully I answered.
Yeah, I understand things are
Still in the planning.
conceptual stage here, for sure. How many commercial businesses do we envision on that site?
We're not envisioning, any. Dave Gendron wants to do multifamily apartment complex for 55 plus. That's what he wants to do. But again, you get 300 units out there. Is there something, a cafe that could go in the bottom floor of the building? Is there some of those things? We looked at restaurant uses, we looked at other uses. The traffic study is pretty clear that if you start adding those commercial uses, then you're gonna create more problems with traffic.
Right.
We want to get this project approved. We want the flexibility to do some other uses inside, but are they gonna go? We don't know today. Okay.
Thank you. Any further thoughts on that, Director Hediger?
No, I have nothing else to add.
Okay. Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. My question was along similar lines and probably for Director Hediger. I'm looking at the contract zone ordinance on what's labeled as page 3 and 4 of that. And I guess it goes on to 5 a little bit. But the land use table, so I watched the planning board meeting, and I may have missed if this came up, but is there a reason why, where we're doing a contract zone, I believe we can sort of pick and choose what uses are allowed. Is there a reason why they left in those other commercial uses as permitted? Like, I get the nursery school, the daycare, but then there's business and professional offices, hotels, motels, and inns, personal services, that could be a hairdresser or something, neighborhood retail store. What else do we have here? Hospitals, medical clinics, academic institutions. Is there a reason why all those commercial uses were left in, rather than restricting it to just residential and maybe those other uses like daycare, those sorts of things?
Yeah, I think the reasons are for what Mike Gatto just said. The intent of this is to develop it with residential uses and accessory uses to that. If for some reason that doesn't occur out there, the property owner wants as much flexibility as they can have with the future development of that lot out there. Certainly, these uses can be adjusted, as you said. That's one of the intents of a contract zone, is to kind of pick and choose what you feel is appropriate out there from a use perspective and from a space and bulk perspective. They were satisfied with what was presented.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm just a little concerned about potential commercial uses there. I know the neighbors are concerned, some of the neighbors are concerned about residential as well, but I think once you start adding commercial to it, I'm just concerned about that. I know we have a desperate need for housing, and I want to see that get built, but leaving these things in there, it makes me a little hesitant where those commercial uses are potentially permitted. Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess in our world right now, the commercial use is not generating as much money as the residential use. So building the apartment houses are far more, you're going to get a better return than building a little coffee shop that's coming in. You're going to get more money on that. We saw years ago that warehouse space was $1 or $2 a square foot, where office space was $7 to $8 a square foot. It is now flipped over. You can't give office space away, and warehouse space is through the roof. You can't find warehouse space. So that's the same thing with the residential area. Developments are solely needed, are desperately needed in our city, and you're going to make more money on a residential development than you are to put up a doctor's office or something like that. It's just not generating the revenue. I think they're looking at just that versatility, and who wouldn't want, if you have all those units, who wouldn't want a small diner downstairs in the bottom of the bottom floor? Heck, all the neighbors would walk over. I could see that being a regional. We all liked Friendly's when it was right over there. Friendly's did well on Sabata Street. So I don't see that as a negative. I think it's a positive, and commercial development is where it's at right now. Thank you.
Further comments from the council? Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick question, Director Hediger. If Mr. Gendron so chose to go away from the housing, how much control does the planning board have over what he can do in there? As far as I know, all of this list is approved, but what kind of restrictions could they put on that type of development to assuage the fears of the neighbors?
Well, not knowing exactly what those fears are. I mean, if it's traffic, it's going to be, any development in there is going to potentially need some type of traffic analysis. But again, it has to hit 100 trips in order for like a full study to be done. So if they came in with like a small office building or something like that, it's just a matter of meeting the space and bulk standards. He's got 11 acres out there. He could choose to subdivide it, do some of it residential, some of it commercial. He could do all commercial out there potentially. With the planning board, it's not a matter of whether they like it or not. It's whether or not you meet the development review criteria. So if they have to meet 30 criteria, and they meet them all, it gets approved. They may be able to, along with staff, maybe we can influence like additional plantings or buffers or something like that. It's not in an area where the design district overlay applies. If you recall that applies more in the downtown area where we try to influence what the property is going to look like. There, it's just a matter of their preference, and maybe we try to direct them towards something, but there isn't a hard requirement in the ordinance.
Would it be possible to insert something that or X number or a certain percentage of the property would have to be residential to get away from the fears of it being a shopping mall out there?
I think that's potentially an option depending on how it's worded. I mean, that's one of the advantages of a contract zone is the council can put specific restrictions in there. Just like we have a height requirement now, maybe there's a density requirement, maybe there's square footage limitations, things of that nature.
I just think that if we could add something that's not going to get in the way of what it is proposed, but would safeguard against the worst-case scenario that the neighbors are envisioning, I think that would go a long way to promoting a good rapport between the developer and the neighbors moving forward with this. So it's food for thought. Thank you.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the way I understand it, then, if he has to go in front of the planning board, no matter what, has to be redone. He has to get approval by the planning board again after he gets the design built and all that, correct?
If the council approves rezoning, then the development of the lot, requires planning board review.
Okay. So wouldn't we have a say on what's going in there at that point?
Your say is limited to whatever's on this list here. So anything that's shown as a permitted use here, they're going to be allowed to do as a matter of right.
Because I'd hate to see us hamstring them because they may want to put a pharmacy in there, barbershop, small unit things. I'm sure the people could use it. So I'd like to see the development go through, and I don't want to put any restrictions on them.
Yeah, if the mayor wants it, Mr. Gatto probably can further elaborate on some of those types of uses that would go there.
Yes, please, Mr. Gatto.
I'm looking on page 3 of the contract zone, David, and retail is not permitted. Shopping center. Not gonna happen.
You could do a
Grocery store, not gonna
Do a
happen.
business park, though.
You could do businesses,
You could do.
I think professional offices are allowed, but we own an industrial park, or we want to do a business park.
Exactly, but that's, excuse me, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly why I'm thinking that if we put in some safeguards that aren't going to interfere with anything that you want to do, and it would just make the neighborhood feel more comfortable with what's going on there. Because I would hate to see, 6 professional buildings put in there with all of the traffic that would bring, after being told that, and I'm not saying that this is what he wants to do. All I'm saying is you came to us and you said that you want this flexibility. Well, I think there needs to be a little bit of limits to those flexibilities so that worst-case scenario doesn't happen. And that's all I'm talking about. I support the general consensus on what he wants to do with this property, but times change between now and next year. Who knows where the economy's going to be? There may be something different that fits there, and I would hate to promise our residents of that whole neighborhood that, we've supported, 55-plus housing in there, that's what's going to go in there, and then all of a sudden, we're going to put 6 office buildings in there, and it's approved, it's on the list, so it has to be allowed. So I just think some sort of limitation to guarantee that a certain percentage of it was residential, and allow any of the commercial that you've got on your list. I'm fine with that going along with residential housing, but I'm not comfortable just saying any commercial is allowed whether we do residential or not. So I think there has to be some sort of caveat on that some will be residential. So that's my feeling on it.
In response, the traffic study says on the first page of the executive summary that it was done for 99 trips, 199 peak hour trips. That relates to 475 multifamily apartments, or 37,000 square feet of commercial space. On 11 acres, you could put a lot more than that, okay? But the traffic study has so many issues in it, it would be cost prohibitive to put a large commercial development out there. We might be able to get the residential in. Certainly, if the council wants something like what you're saying, that's up to the council.
Okay. And what's your comfort level with that?
Anything that, and I don't know the answers, I'm sorry, but anything that impedes the ability to develop this site is going to make it difficult to make the costs work. And, they have medical office, the hospital has a medical office clinic. It could be at the lower level. The hospital's just down the street.
Right.
So there could be some uses that might help on this thing that make the economics make sense.
Right, and I'm all for that part of it, but in conjunction with residential
I have
housing.
no problems in conjunction with. The problem
Yes.
is, what is the numbers? What's the breakdown?
What would you suggest?
I don't have a suggestion. We're hoping to get
Would you be
321
comfortable-
residential houses.
75%, 60%? I mean, what would the comfort level be?
I don't know.
I just think that there needs to be some sort of percentage on residential housing, and then anything that supports that residential housing, whether it's hair salon or small cafe or a, corner store variety or something along those lines, I'm great, or even a medical clinic or anything like that, I think would be wonderful along with the residential housing. I just think we need to ensure that that is part of this development before we move forward with it. Thank you.
Councillor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps we can cut to the chase. I'm hearing what Councillor McCarthy has to say, but This is but the first reading of this attempt to rezone. Perhaps we could ask the developer, Mr. Gatto, and planning to get together before the second reading, come up with a list of what they would envision for usages other than residential. In other words, if you think a coffee shop, I mean, just what you would agree would be potential usages that we could incorporate into the zone, and I think that would assuage a lot of the fears of people in that neighborhood. I mean, otherwise than that, I don't know. I'm all for the development. I think housing is needed, particularly, and I don't speak for the bias, but over 55 housing is very important, particularly if you're over 55. But I just think that maybe if you could get together and come up with what you could agree would be acceptable usages, what you would agree to envision out there, then at the second reading, we could take it up and take it from there. I don't know whether my colleagues on the council would agree to that idea or not.
Anything else, Councilor Clement?
No, sir, thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. So, I mean, I agree with that, but I kind of would like to see something in the actual contract zone, some kind of guardrails, like what Councilor McCarthy was saying, whether it's a percentage of the total, the total development, or we could also say, I assume we could put in there something like anything that's not residential, you can't build more than X number of thousands of square feet on that property. I just feel like this property should be for housing. I know that's what's planned right now, but where we're doing a contract zone, I feel like we need to get it right now and make sure that that is going to be the purpose for that lot, and that other things like hotels, motels, inns, restaurants, those sorts of things, I don't feel like are really needed on that property.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Clement. We it's been mentioned around the table here. We need housing in this city, and I think, some of the residents certainly have, varied concerns, but I think the top concern would be traffic. And so, yes, I'm concerned that with commercial use, it's going to bring a lot of people. There's certainly going to be people living there taking advantage of the coffee shop, but depending on the coffee shop, there could be a lot of people coming to the coffee shop and generating a lot of trips. And so, yeah, I'm concerned about access, traffic, and all of the additional trips that might come with certain developments, or certain commercial uses. Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you. Director Hediger, do we have to approve, we have the ability to modify this, correct? This does not have to go back to the planning board if we make minor changes to it?
If they are not substantive changes, I think, or if you're taking away things from it, I think you folks will be all set. You'll be all set,
Okay.
depending on where the changes go,
Well,
though.
time is money, so if
Understood.
it has to go back to the planning board that just starts it.
I'll remind you folks, like last time, you took a straight rezoning and you were looking to place conditions on it, and that needed to go back to the planning
Okay.
board. That's part of the additional process that was involved. So it may depend on what you folks are looking to place for conditions on there, or what the applicant actually wants to do if they decide to make some concessions.
If you can come back to me after.
So if we start crossing out lines out of this land use table, is that going to be substantive, or?
I don't think so, because you're only making it less restrictive, or more restrictive, I guess, in that sense.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you. For the sense of time, I suggest that we just approve it right now, and then ask for, before the second reading comes back, we make the modifications, ask the developer to sit down with code, and if it's like what you suggested, 75% of the property is for residential, and 25 or 60, 40, or whatever the case may be. Everybody's in agreement. Nobody wants, and as they said, you cannot afford to put up office buildings there. It's not going to make money. It's not going to make money at all. So a lot of our fears, and I'm sure he doesn't have a problem saying, okay, we're not going to put an office building there. And that will help ease some of the concerns, because it's cost prohibitive. So I said, we can bang this around for the next 5 hours. I'd rather not. I suggest we just approve it with this reading, with the caveat that they come back for the second reading with some of these changes that are acceptable to the developer, and move forward. Mr. Gatto, does that sound reasonable at this point, or Mr. Gendron, or what's your thoughts on it?
I guess you guys should tell us what you want, and then we'll just say yes or no. We can't do it, or we can do it. It doesn't look like everybody wants this project to happen. And if we start taking this out, putting this in, it's just not gonna work. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. We can agree to something today, but doesn't mean tomorrow is gonna happen.
Correct.
Who knows?
We don't want to handcuff you.
No, that's what, it sounds like that's what's happening. As far as office, we got Liberty Mutual closed, 100,000 square feet. So there is no office need today. There may be medical space needed, but there's no office space. Promenade Mall, we closed it, there's no more retail there. So retail is struggling also.
So I guess how do we, they don't want a strip mall behind their Charles Street. They don't want,
It's not allowed.
correct. I know this is going to be optics, and this is just clarifying, just making it clear. I know, Mike, it's just how do we present it that everybody understands it? Because the fear is they don't know. And when you don't know, you think the worst. So if we can just clarify some of these things and say, okay, we're not going to put a Liberty Mutual there. I know it's not zoned, it's cost prohibitive, but let's just make those statements and just clarify it and say, yes, 100%, I think everybody on this panel would vote in favor of residential housing there and senior housing with just a couple stipulations. I think what we're hearing from some of the councilors, and correct me if I'm wrong, they don't want a Liberty Mutual back there, and they're fearful for the neighborhood and fearful for everything else. So I'm just trying to broker a deal here that would make sense to you as a developer and to the neighborhood. If you put that many units, yes, you should allow some things that complement that unit.
And that's the intent today.
That's,
We're not looking to put a Dunkin' Donuts for everybody in this neighborhood to come. We're looking to put businesses that will accommodate the 300 units we're putting there. That's what we're looking to do.
correct. And so if we said, so then if they came back and said 70% of the property had to be residential, that still gives you that ability for 30% to whatever the case may be for any office. Again, Dunkin' Donuts, that's a bad example because they line up across the block, or Aroma Joe's on Sabata Street that lines it. But a Cracker Barrel restaurant downstairs. Does that sound acceptable? Or maybe you guys talk and not, I'm not trying to put you on the spot right here.
I'm trying to read his mind and not doing a very good job of it. I think that it is more likely or logical that a percent of residential versus, and again, retail is not allowed, shopping malls. Strip malls, not allowed. We're not asking for that.
So that's why my suggestion is we just pass it right now and put the ball in your court and say,
We can
come
talk
up
with staff about
talk with staff.
language that.
Exactly.
That works for the development, but also is understandable.
Gives you some flexibility.
Is it 30% of square footage? Is it 30% of the lot? Is it,
Correct.
You can have those conversations with Director Hediger.
So,
we can do that.
But we've been at this for 5 years. we're still playing with it 5 years later. If I didn't live in Lewiston, I'd have walked a long time ago.
Well, thank you for your patience. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. So there's light at the end of the tunnel, because if you come back, it's going to be, when would they be back on the agenda?
17th? Next week.
17th. 17th, 2 more weeks.
Later this month.
Oh, I'm not gonna be here.
Yeah. So there's light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you for your patience.
All right.
So I suggest we just, again, we're beating a dead horse, guys and gals, sorry, ladies. Just move it forward and have them talk.
Councilor Clement?
Just for clarification, I'm hearing commercial, I'm hearing retail, when I think basically what's being talked about is services for the residents. Maybe if we look at it that way, it's services. It's not retail, it's not commercial. You know, I'm not going to drive 5 miles into a barber shop there or whatever, but somebody that lives in the complex might. So these would be services for residents that I envision, not commercial or retail development. Thank you.
Anything further you'd like to add, Director Hediger?
I'm all set.
Okay. And you think a meeting could happen, there could be however many meetings necessary could happen before the next agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's up to the applicant, but yeah, we'll make ourselves available.
Okay. Anything further? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Agenda item number 8.
Item number 8, public hearing and approval of amendments to the general assistance policy for annual authorization of eligibility amounts. Requested action that the maximum amounts allowed for general assistance and the maximums allowed for food, housing, personal care, utilities, heating, fuel, transportation, and recovery residence expenses in the general assistance policy for persons eligible to receive assistance in accordance with the standards of eligibility be adopted as presented in accordance with HUD guidelines and the current Thrifty Food Plan.
May I have a motion, please? So moved. Councilor P., second by Councilor Harriman. Discussion? All right, well, sorry, before we do that, we have Director Brackett, if you can kick us off.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm here to present the annual general assistance maximums. The maximums are calculated based on HUD fair market rental amounts and the annual change in the federal poverty level. Appendices.
Excuse me, one second. Do we-
Oh, sorry. Appendices D, utilities, E, heat and fuel, F, personal care, G, mileage rate, and H, burial have not changed. Appendices A, overall maximums have increased by 7.5%. Appendices C, house and maximums have increased by 7%. And appendices B, food maximums have increased by 3.5%. The recovery residents have increased by 4.3%. These increases are effective from October 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024.
Thank you. Discussion? Or did you have something, Administrator Hunter? No. Oh, okay. Discussion, Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director. I think I've asked this question before, and I wasn't sure about how the answer was, but these services, these availabilities, like for food and for housing and that, can they be added up together? Or is that total of, let's say, $1,751 is for whatever they use it for? But that's only one total.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, we'll go under food, and I'm going to just use a number. There's a household of 8. They're allowed up to $1,751 for food.
And that's based on the number in the household?
Correct.
Okay.
And now, are they also qualified under housing, $1,945, This only goes up to a household of 6. Are they also allowed that?
Okay, if you look at the overall maximums, which have increased by 7.5%, based on the number in the household, that household cannot receive more than that overall maximum. So even though there's a maximum set for food of $291, we'll say for one in the household, and their rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $908, those two amounts exceed the overall maximum of $853. We can only assist up to the overall maximum of $853.
Okay, thank you very much. That's what I thought, but I wanted to clarify it. So thank you.
And just to add to that, we have partnered with various organizations, social service organizations in the community to offset. So, for instance, if a single person, the overall maximum for CMP is $85.50, we have reached out to other organizations to assist us with that $85.50 so we do not exceed that overall maximum.
Further, anything else, Councilor Pease?
No, thank you very much.
Further discussion from the council? Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Brackett. And thank you for everything you're doing for us. Agenda item number 9.
Item number 9, amendments to the athletic field use policy. Requested action to approve the proposed amendments to City Policy Number 3, Athletic Field Use Policy, as recommended by the Recreation Director and Deputy Director of Public Works for Maintenance and Operations.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor Pease, second by Councilor LaChapelle. Director Welsh, can you kick us off?
Certainly, good evening. So over the last 6 or so months, we've been updating all the policies regarding parks, facilities, and this is kind of our last one. This is the same policy that we workshopped, I believe, in July. And we were waiting on presenting this final version. Basically, we just needed the okay to do the changes to the hours on Franklin Pasture Complex. So now those are finalized. This policy has the updating of the availability of the athletic hours. It also has the removing of outdated program operations, specifically revolving around the softball leagues. There was a time in Lewiston where there were a lot of competing leagues, and it needed the extra terminology to make sure that everybody had equitable access. The way that the policy is written now, if we were to see a boost in adult softball league participation and engagement, we could still help schedule those as needed, so we wouldn't need this language moving forward. We're also adding the rental fee structure. Previously, the athletic field rental fee structure was living in another city document, and we just felt that it would make sense to put the athletic field fees in the same document as the policy itself. And there are a couple of other housekeeping items, including the updating of facility names and talking about or mentioning how folks can go about accessing the fields and making sure that there's an order of which the facilities are granted.
Thank you, Director. Discussion from the council? Councilor Jelinek?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions, Director Welch. I just want to comment that, I appreciate how much time and energy you and your team have put into this. I mean, it's been a lot of thoughtful conversations, I feel like, to get to the place that we are tonight, voting on this. And I just want to acknowledge the efforts and all you did to just really listen to what people had to say when it came to all this. So thank you for that.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Stephanie on this. I don't know if everybody must know by now that the canteen at the high school got broken into again and destroyed a lot of property. They caught some of the individuals, fortunately. There was an officer on patrol. They are minors, so we're trying to figure out what they're going to do. I'd like to see them go out and have to do community service for X amount of hours They probably wouldn't like that. But we do need to restrict how this is used and who's there and when they're there. We've got to have some control, and I agree that we need to do this. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. This is just kind of a random question, but on the use fee schedule, which is the last page of this agenda item, so Lewiston Nonprofit Practice and Lewiston Nonprofit Game have different dollar amounts per hour. What is the rationale behind that?
It's field preparations. And more specifically, on the right column, you'll see the all other facilities. That is essentially all grass. So if there are game preparations that have to be made, fields getting lined, baseball diamonds getting groomed, specifically for on the turf, there are certain maintenance things that have to happen if we're going to be opening up the turf for a game rather than a practice, and that just kind of helps offset those costs.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you very much, Director Welsh. And thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 10.
Item number 10, public hearing and approval of Lowell Street Omnibus Tax Increment Financing District and Credit Enhancement Agreement. Requested action to conduct a public hearing regarding the establishment of the Lowell Street Omnibus Tax Increment Financing District and Credit Enhancement Agreement as described in the agenda documents, hear public testimony in that regard, take action to establish the district for a period of 30 years, and authorize the city administrator to execute the legal documents and DECD TIF application to establish the district and credit enhancement agreement substantially in the form presented. Furthermore, the city administrator and director of economic development are authorized to make minor amendments to the application as may be requested by DECD.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor LaChapelle, second by Councilor Clement. Director Jeffers, please kick us off.
I must say I'm pleased to be here tonight. This has been a project that has been in the works for over a year. Jason Levesque had bought the PEX building several years ago. Along with the PEX building is the parking garage, which you can see between Chapel Street and Chapel Street Alley on this attached, or this map. There was also some real estate next to the substation. Right on Middle Street, it's actually 55 Middle Street that fronts onto Lowell Street, and Joe Manisto, who is the owner of the DHS building, which you can see there's a sea of parking on this map, and that's really where we're looking to establish a TIF district that'll help transform this from a sea of parking to a neighborhood that'll be very desirable, and that's the goal. It's really a vision that's been articulated. I've worked more closely with Jason on this and sort of the broad planning. And this tax increment finding, we've talked about it several times in executive session. We've continued to dial it in. And so wanted to come and share with you where we're at this point. So this is the district we're talking about, Main Street right at the bottom of the map, and River on the left, hospital up to the right. We need two actions tonight. One is to create this omnibus TIF district. It's a new mechanism that, I shouldn't say new, it's been around for a few years, but I'm an old enough dog that to me it's a new district. It's a new mechanism. We used to just do individual credit enhancement agreements. This is a mechanism that allows the city to create an omnibus TIF district within which individual credit enhancement agreements can be done with various developers within that district. It's going to be 3.09 acres in size. There's 3 different real estate owners there. We are looking to establish the district for a period of 30 years. The individual credit enhancement agreements won't be for that 30-year time frame. The one that I'm asking you to take action on tonight with Jason Levesque is for a 20-year time frame where it's actively putting reimbursement back to the developer. But the way the omnibus TIF districts, when we establish a district, you sort of say, here's the cap on the most. We won't consider
credit enhancement agreements beyond that 65%. And we can't do it longer than 30 years. Anything we've done will be 20 years or less, I suspect, at this point. But this allows us to do this once with the Department of Economic and Community Development, and then going forward, every credit enhancement agreement after that, we have less interaction with the state. It's really much more of a local process. This shows the real estate involved, and sort of looking at it, unfortunately, I don't think I can, yeah, it doesn't, it's going on my screen, but it won't go. On the left side of that, building 1 is where the 3.09 and the acres are. Directly across the street is where Joe Manisto's project will go. And then the other real estate are where future projects could go. This gives you a sense of the sort of the scale and type of development. This is on Chapel Street Alley. The garage is directly sort of off to the left shoulder of the person creating this image. The building, the white building, is the one owned by Joe Manisto. And I should note, they're both in the room tonight as well. So if you have specific questions for the developers, but I asked them to be here and whatever questions arise. But it's the darker building is building 1. It's 150 market rate units. There'll be a mix of ground floor commercial. No tenants, to my knowledge, that have been secured, but that's the planning. It's a $32 million project. This is what it would look like standing basically at Joe Manisto's building, looking across the street at Lowell Street. So you can see it'll really fill that block from Chapel Street Alley up to Middle Street. It's a 6-story building. It really does have quite a bit of scale to it, and I think there have been many, many iterations of various architectural renderings that have gone through. This was also approved by the planning board at this point, so this is not a plan. This is well, it is a plan, but it's passed, it's got the development review approval at this point. This is JLM Enterprises, is how Joe Manisto does business under that LLC. His building will be slightly larger, 172 units. Again, ground floor commercial. $32 million, a little bit more than that in new investment expected. On that one, the city planning staff have received the application from Goral Palmer, and it's slated for action later this month. The two issues that have really been the primary beyond the credit enhancement agreement that would use a portion of the new tax revenues to go back to the project to help make them economically viable are also really changing the landscape. This is just an area that's, to be fair, I think has largely been forgotten. It's just sort of, it's been there, there's been surface parking, it's served the hospital well, but it's also right next to the river. It's a block off of Main Street. There's a reason to redevelop the site, and Jason really recognized that, and as did Joe. But you've got these telephone poles, have spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to get those wires off of it along Lowell Street. I'd like to take a moment let me, Councilor MacArthur, when we've had previous conversation, they said, can you put those wires behind the buildings? That's one of the options that's sort of being considered now that we've actually sat with some of the engineers. We still need to get them off of Lowell Street. Some of the cross arms, we're trying to think of, but that was a good solution. Part of what complicates it is you need a certain distance off of a building. And so the building that's already approved for building 1 is right up against the property line. So to say, okay, 10 feet would put the poles in the middle of the road. So that's why that one didn't work. But it's working through it. Engineers are working on it. City engineers have been involved in that discussion as well. The second issue has been, let's really take that street and turn it into something that makes it a more desirable place to live. It's easier to get to. This is just a concept. This particular one was from Seattle that was pulled from Jeff Bully on the Public Works team. It said, is this the sort of thing you're thinking about, Link? This is something that the tax increment financing, this is an eligible cost for us to cover on it.
but that's not something that's contemplated right in the credit enhancement agreement that I'll be asking you to take. But it is an eligible project cost as we do this. This gets down to the nuts and bolts of it. This is the pro forma for Building 1, the credit enhancement agreement. That real estate specific where that building is being built is $139,500 is the current assessed valuation. Bill Healy had took a look at the pro forma, said this is what I believe the assessed valuation will be at the end, which he brought it in at $16 million. That gives us $15,860,500 in new assessed valuation, which will generate about $475,800 in new taxes. The infrastructure debt that's contemplated in the credit enhancement agreement is really capped at $3 million. Doing serial debt for 20 years, I'm not sure what color that is, the light brown. Yeah. Not one of my strong suits. Whatever, that light brown, total infrastructure.
Maybe mauve.
Mauve, there we go, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that gives you how the debt service works. The credit enhancement agreement, we talked about this in workshop originally, it was supposed to be a 65% TIF. The developers have agreed to reduce the level of reimbursement that they will receive that they can use towards their own project cost for each of them to cover 25% of the debt service associated with undergrounding the utilities. So when you look at just Building 1, this doesn't quite cash flow on its own until about year 10. There's a slight decrease if we just did Building 1. But as we can see, Building 2 is coming right on the heels of this. We'll be back in front of you within a month or so for a credit enhancement agreement on that. And so if you take Building 1 and Building 2, this is the spreadsheet that includes the valuations on all of them. The green column is the new tax revenues that will be generated from the two projects. The utility debt is the same. I put the credit enhancement agreements, it's 52% to each of the developers for the first 10 years. Then it goes to 50%, and then it goes down 5% a year for each of the rest of the 9 years that remain on the TIF districts. So at the end of the day, tax increments to the city are $194,000 in year 1 and increase over time as our debt goes down. The amount that's available for other uses increases. The other item that is talked about with tax increment financing are tax shifts, and the way the state determines how much the city receives in state revenue sharing and how much we receive for state aid for education is based on the total valuation of the city. And from the state's perspective, the bigger your valuation, your better your capacity to pay your own bills, so they actually reduce the amount of revenues you receive. Likewise, county taxes are based on the total valuation, so boy, you got a big tax base, you can pay more in county taxes. So when you are able to do tax increment financing and those things that go, the assessed valuation that is associated with project costs, the reimbursements to the developers, the infrastructure debt, other issues we'll be bringing on, all of that can get written off. So this is just a good estimate based on today. Every year, the credit, the amount we receive for state aid for education, all of that changes. And I've also been holding just the mill rate steady and the assessed valuation steady through these pro formas. The reality is mill rates will likely change, and assessed valuations will likely change as well over the course of 20 years. But without getting into the weeds there, the big number on the bottom right corner there, it's nearly $4 million worth of revenues that over the course of 20 years, if we did not TIF this, we would lose either $4 million from the state or combined with paying more to the county. So tax shifts are something worth really considering and taking advantage of. Other things that we had that are written into the credit enhancement agreement and the establishment of the TIF district are making those improvements to Lowell Street, extension of the Riverfront Trail from Island Point up to Sunnyside Park. We can capitalize loan and grant programs for economic development. We can also help run the economic development programs for the city. Historically, for the last 20 years, the Walmart TIF has played that role in covering staff salaries. That TIF is retiring next year, so this is one that could be stepping in. We have other TIFs will be coming in later this year, asking for that same type of, let's cover that base for multiple sides. We're not in any one individually. We can also use marketing promotion of the city for economic development and public art and promotion of the city as an arts destination. That's a lot in a very short time, but yes.
Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One question. We're going to be going through a reevaluation in a couple of years, and the tax rate's going to drop. If it drops from the current 30 to 22, what's that going to do to the tax revenue coming to the city?
The valuation always changes. 16 million is sort of the minimum. That's based on a 71% state equalization ratio, which they come in and say, hey, look, you're charging this, but here's what the market rate is. And so what we charge is what we assess at is 71% of the market value. When this project comes online, it will likely be equaling it out. So while the mill rate will hopefully go down, the valuation should be about the same or perhaps could go up. If the valuation stays the same, there will be less revenue. I think the fact that it's being assessed at 71% now, valuation's likely to go up. The amount of taxes generated should be more or less on par. And this project should be done about the same time we're finishing the reval and putting it in place. Good question.
Yeah, because I just, I'm all for this project, but I just want to make sure that the numbers are realistic. I understand you can't project out valuations of buildings and what our wonderful tax rate will be. So I was just curious, because that's short-term, that's coming right up. I was just curious how that was going to affect this project.
No, it's a very good question. Yeah, the whole goal for the reval is to bring our mill rate back down. But still, same amount of taxes need to be generated. It really sort of shifts it from commercial to residential. But with any luck, the numbers should be in the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Harriman.
Thank you. So, sort of going off from that, the valuation that was in the pro forma in that chart there, is that 71% of the proposed or the assumed valuation of the final building?
That was based on today, and that's written into the credit enhancement agreement that you will have a minimum optimal assessed value of 16 million. That 16 million was based on the revenues that this project will generate, and Bill can't assess that at 100% because no other commercial property is there. He has to assess it at that same 71% ratio, which brings it down. So as we get closer, that should likely go up.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. More a statement than a question. So I think back to the picture that you showed with the power lines and the empty parking lot and the...
I can bring it up.
No, you don't have to bring it back up again. But, that has been the image of that area for a very, very long time now. And we spoke earlier tonight about the need of housing and development, and I just see this as a boost. I appreciate Mayor Levesque coming forward with something like this and his partner coming forward with something like this. This is development that we need in our community. I think it's going to greatly enhance our River Island master plan, and I think it's a good thing that we're going to be having something like this happening. And the idea that we have a street that's closed off like that with some retail space, I just think of the whole development of that area, completely changing the image of that area, and that's a great thing. So I fully support this. Thank you.
Great.
Yes, I support the investment as well. Anytime we can turn a parking lot into a building, it's a great day. Councillor Jelinas.
We've spoken, a lot tonight about how, housing is so desperately needed in this area. And so, I think this is a bold vision for sure. But I'm excited to think about how these 3 acres, especially the location, are going to be used. It's a good thing, and I too am in support. I am curious if there's been conversations with the developers regarding the ground floor commercial use that's been spoken of. Are there specific plans? Has anything been outlined beyond just the fact that they'd like that to be? Oh. Nothing specific,
Th-
okay.
th- Yeah, I was going to say there are ideas, but there are no tenants at this point, so.
Fair
I'm
enough.
seeing Jason shaking his head, so I'll take it at that.
I would love a great Greek restaurant, so. Further comments from the council? Public comment for this agenda item. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call, Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm excited. We have 3 developments on the agenda tonight. 2 of them have gone very well. I'm hoping the third goes as smoothly as these. But I want to thank the developers for coming forward. This is exactly what the city of Lewiston needs.
Great.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, I'm excited about this project. We've been talking about it for a long time. It is what we need. Can't think of a better area in town to put that and tidy that up a little bit down there. I mean, I go back a long ways to when there was a hardware store in there. And, you know, it has not been upgraded in a long time. I think Mayor Levesque is doing great things with his ideas, and I am fully supportive of the project and will vote in favor of it in just a moment, I hope. Thank you.
Further discussion from the council? Anything else, Director Jeffers?
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear the council seems to be generally in support. I mean, I think this really is an exciting project that's going to create a neighborhood where there's nothing right now, and one that'll be a desirable place to live. I think it'll help put us on the map.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 6?
Absolutely, yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to get into position here for a condemnation hearing, so if you can give us a couple minutes.
Brief recess of 5 minutes.
We're going to take a brief recess.
Get
And,
comfortable.
and we're back. Thank you. Madam Clerk, agenda item, my agenda's hidden. I think it's number 11.
Yes, item number 11, condemnation hearing for the building located at 23 Sand Hill Road. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item, to conduct a hearing to determine if the building located at 23 Sand Hill Road has met the dangerous building statutes as defined in Title 17, Section 2851 et al.
And, no, we don't need, we're going to proceed here with this. So we are meeting this evening to conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure at 23 Sand Hill Road is a nuisance or a dangerous building within the meaning of the applicable Maine state statute at Section 2851 of Title 17 of the Maine revised statutes, and whether the structure poses a serious threat to public health and safety within the meaning of Section 2856 of that title. If the council makes either determination, it will then determine what actions the property owner must take. Under Section 2851, a structure or any part thereof is a nuisance or a dangerous building if it is structurally unsafe, unstable, or unsanitary, constitutes a fire hazard, is unsuitable or improper for the use or occupancy to which it is put, constitutes a hazard to health or safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, or abandonment, or is otherwise dangerous to life or property. Under Section 2856, a municipality has the right to secure buildings that pose a serious threat to the public health and safety. These are the standards that the council will use at this hearing. Before we start, I first have a question for all city council members. The building at 23 Sand Hill Road is owned by the heirs of Dorothy Severy, FKA Dorothy Fleury, who are Gordon Severy, Lori Ann Touchette, and Raymond L. Fleury II, and heirs of Raymond L. Fleury I, who are Lori Ann Touchette and Raymond L. Fleury II. The parcel of land at 23 Sand Hill Road is owned by Raymond L. Fleury I, Franklin Property Trust, LLC, and St. Mary Federal Credit Union, to which Dirigo Federal Credit Union is a successor in interest, have encumbrances on the real estate at 23 Sand Hill Road. Does any city council member know an owner or another party of interest or have any knowledge about this matter that means you could not fairly and impartially hear the facts and decide the matter based on the evidence presented at this hearing? Thank you. Next, I will ask for representatives of the owners or parties in interest to introduce yourselves, including your name, address, and position. Are the owners or their representatives present? If you are, please head to the podium. I'm sorry, did somebody say that's us? No? Okay. Are any parties of interest or their owners, are any parties of interest or their representative present? Now the procedures that the City Council will follow in conducting this hearing are as follows. Number 1, any documents to be used in this proceeding will be marked as an exhibit. I accept into evidence the Planning and Code Enforcement Department's previously provided exhibits A through P for 23 Sand Hill Road. Number 2, the presentation of evidence for the property will occur in the following order. A, City Planning and Code Enforcement Department staff will present an opening statement and relevant evidence regarding why they believe the structure at 23 Sand Hill Road is a nuisance or dangerous building and what remedies the council shall order. City Council members can then ask questions of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department, a party in interest, or a witness. Each side can then make closing remarks of not more than 2 minutes each. Only parties to these hearings will be allowed to participate. Comments from the public will not be taken at this hearing. After all the information has been presented, the record will be closed. The City Council will deliberate and take a vote on whether the structure in question is a threat to the public health and safety that requires prompt action. If the council so determines, it shall deliberate and take a vote on the appropriate order to be made to remedy the situation. The City Council will deliberate and take a vote on whether the structure in question is a nuisance or dangerous building. If the council determines that the structure is a nuisance or dangerous building, it shall deliberate and take a vote on the appropriate order to be made to remedy the situation. This is an administrative hearing and not a court proceeding or trial. Therefore, the formal rules of evidence will not apply. As mayor, I will determine the appropriateness and admissibility of evidence on the advice of our city attorney. I now ask that the Lewiston Planning and Code Enforcement Department present the city council with information relevant to this matter before it. If you could both introduce ourselves. And for the public record, we have Council Mike Carey here as our city attorney.
David Hediger, Director of Planning and Code Enforcement.
And Travis Tardif, Code Enforcement Officer.
So on September 12th, 2023, a notice of this hearing was recorded in the Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds in Book 11430, page 201, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit A. 23 Sand Hill Road is identified as parcel RD-RE 00003518 on the City of Lewiston tax maps, which I refer to as the parcel, a portion of which and property information for the parcel on which the structure is located is included in your packets as Exhibit B. The building at 23 Sand Hill Road, which I refer to as the structure, is a single-family residence. The parcel is owned by Raymond L. Fleury, first by virtue of a quitclaim deed from Franklin Properties Trust LLC dated February 22nd, 2017, and recorded in the Androscoggin Registry of Deeds on March 1st, 2017. Franklin Property Trust LLC reserved an option to purchase the premise for a period of 20 years following the date of the deed, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit C. A 1994 divorce decree awarded the structure to Raymond L. Fleury I and Dorothy Severi as joint tenants with a right of survivorship, and provided that Raymond L. Fleury I could reside in the residence for his lifetime. A copy of the divorce decree is included in your packets as Exhibit D. Raymond L. Fleury I died on October 1st, 2017, and his heirs per his obituary are Lori Ann Touchette and Raymond L. Fleury II. Dorothy Severi died on January 30th, 2020, and her heirs per her obituary are Gordon Severi, Lori Ann Touchette, and Raymond L. Fleury II. A copy of the obituaries are included in your packets as Exhibit E and F. St. Marie Federal Credit Union has an encumbrance on the structure, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit G. On September 14, 2023, Franklin Property Trust LLC was served with a notice of the hearing and a return of services in your packets as Exhibit H. On September 14, 2023, heirs of Raymond L. Fleury I, care of Lori Ann Touchette, were served with a notice of hearing and that return of services in your packets as Exhibit I. On September 14, 2023, heirs of Raymond L. Fleury I, care of Raymond L. Fleury II, were served with a notice of hearing that return of services in your packets as Exhibit J. On September 14th, heirs of Dorothy Severi, care of Gordon Severi, were served with a notice of hearing and that return of services in your packets as Exhibit K. On the 14th, the heirs of Dorothy Severi, care of Lori Ann Touchette, were served with a notice of hearing and that return of services in your packets as Exhibit L. On the 14th, the heirs of Dorothy Severi, care of Raymond L. Fleury II, were served with a notice of hearing and that return of services in your packets as Exhibit M. St. Marie Federal Credit Union, through its successor, Dirigo Federal Credit Union, acknowledged service of the notice on September 13, 2023, and that acknowledgement of service is in your packets as Exhibit N. Travis Tardif, our Code Enforcement Officer now, will give a presentation on the conditions of the property.
All right, I'm City of Lewiston Code Enforcement Officer Travis Tardif. I have over 6 years of experience as a Maine Certified Code Enforcement Officer. My qualifications and certifications are located in the packets as Exhibit O. In the following slideshow, which is included in your packet as Exhibit P, I will describe the conditions at 23 Sand Hill Road that cause the structure to be dangerous or nuisance. So the first floor has partially collapsed into the basement. Building's been abandoned. Appearance of abandonment attracts transients looking for a place to sleep and live, possibly causing further deterioration and potential for a full collapse. The exterior is severely deteriorated. The roof is deteriorated and leaking. severe health and safety hazard to anyone that attempts to enter the building due to the structural defects. It's unsuitable for the current residential use to which it is put. Property is not being maintained and nuisance due to the abandonment. Water has been disconnected since 2017, so it's unsuitable for use as plumbing system's is not connected to the water supply for maintenance of sanitary conditions, meaning that all the traps have dried up by now and there's sewer gases entering the building. The electrical service has also been disconnected and unsuitable for use as no working electrical systems, resulting in hazardous conditions due to lack of smoke detectors, required lighting, and heating facilities. So the rear entryway floor has collapsed into the basement. On the right-hand picture, it's hard to see because it was taken through a window, but you can see one of the supports for the first floor is a stack of cinder blocks, which is not stable, and that's going to fail eventually. Severe health and safety hazard due to dangerous and unsanitary conditions. There's extreme moisture damage on the interior from years of a leaking roof. The picture on the left is one of the two stairwells in the home, and you can see that that left side of that stairway is just disintegrated. So it's also a nuisance due to unsanitary conditions. You can smell the mustiness without even going inside of it. So in conclusion, the building is currently secured, and we will require that it remain so. The building qualifies as being dangerous due to severe structural damage caused by moisture. The building qualifies as being a nuisance due to unsanitary and unsafe conditions. It's unsuitable for the residential use to which it is put. It constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, and abandonment. It's dangerous to life and property, and it must be demolished. The additional pictures are just a few pictures of the deterioration of the exterior, and then a happy little tree growing out of the roof. So we request that the council conclude that the structure at 23 Sand Hill Road must be secure because it poses a serious threat to public health and safety. As I said before, the building is currently secure and must remain so. We request that the council conclude that the structure at 23 Sand Hill Road is a nuisance or dangerous building for the conclusions detailed in the PowerPoint, by which the structure meets every standard under the State of Maine Dangerous Building Statute. Any of those reasons meets Maine's law standard for a nuisance or dangerous building. Taken together, it shows that the structure poses a danger to the public. We request the structure be demolished and removed.
Thank you. Now we're up for questions from the council for planning and code. Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't get a chance to drive out there. Usually I do on these, and I didn't have a chance. Whereabouts is that one on Sand Hill? Is that coming down the hill on the left?
On Sand, it's the second to last place on the left on Sand Hill.
Coming in from Lisbon Street on the upper section?
Yep.
Okay, so it's not going down the hill?
No.
Okay. The only reason I asked that is because my aunt and uncle who used to own that hill. It's down on the bottom, and they raised 8 kids there in that small little house. Mm-hmm. So I was sure if it was still theirs or not. Thank you. That's the only question I had.
Okay. Further questions? And is there anything else that you would like to add?
Just one thing that I failed to mention is that the collapse happened within the last year, so it is actively decaying.
We're going to close the record? Sorry, Councilor Pease, did you have something else?
Yeah. How soon could that be done, and who's nickel?
So there's, pending the action that the council takes tonight, there's a 30-day window there upon the order being served where the potential parties with an interest can come back to the city with some type of plan to save this structure. I don't know that there's any hope for this one. After which, the purchasing office will put out an RFP for demolition, and, you know, usually that's a 30-day process in itself, and it's just a matter of the contractor getting out there and moving forward. Part of this process will then have a lien on the property, so we'll recoup those fees upon the sale of the property at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clement?
Mr. Mayor, I was able to walk around this property somewhat over the weekend, and I concur with the findings of code on this. I don't think it's salvageable at all, and it certainly is a hazard as it now exists. Thank you.
Further comments? Further comments from either of you? So now the record is closed, and yeah, and now deliberation is open among the council to for what we should do next. Councilor Pease, do you mind using?
I'd like to make a motion that we tear it down. Proceed. It's a hazard.
I'd second that motion.
Are we making motions for this, Madam Clerk?
Yes, if I could just clarify for the record, Councilor Pease, the motion would be with regard to the property at 23 Sand Hill Road to adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and order of demolition proposed by the City Planning and Code Enforcement Department, which order established the corrective action to be taken by the property owner and the time frame for taking such action, and which authorized the city administrator to take such corrective action if the property owner fails to do so, and to recoup the city's costs through a special tax or collective action.
May I have a motion?
I didn't say it quite that way, but yes.
Thank
Second.
you, Councilor.
So we have Councilor Pease, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Do we need further discussion on this? Madam, anything else? Sorry, Mr. O'Malley, did you have something? No. Oh, I thought you raised your hand, sorry. Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you both. Agenda item number 12.
Item number 12, condemnation hearing for the building located at 87 Summer Street. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to conduct a hearing to determine if the building located at 87 Summer Street has met the dangerous building statutes as defined by Title 17, Section 2851 et al.
Thank you. We are meeting this evening to conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure at 87 Summer Street is a nuisance or dangerous building within the meaning of the applicable Maine State statute at Section 2851 of Title 17 of the Maine Revised Statutes, and whether the structure poses a serious threat to the public health and safety within the meaning of Section 2856 of that title. If the council makes either determination, it will then determine what actions the property owner must take. Under Section 2851, a structure or any part thereof is a nuisance or a dangerous building if it is structurally unsafe, unstable, or unsanitary, constitutes a fire hazard, is unsuitable or improper for the use or occupancy to which it is put, constitutes a hazard to health or safety because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, or abandonment, or is otherwise dangerous to life or property. Under Section 2856, a municipality has the right to secure buildings that pose a serious threat to public health and safety. These are the standards that the council will use at this hearing. Before we start, I first have a question for all city council members. The building at 87 Summer Street is owned by CC Property 2 LLC. Norman C. Torrey and Tammy J. Torrey are parties in interest of the real estate at 87 Summer Street. Does any city council member know the owner or any other party in interest or have knowledge about this matter? That means you could not fairly and impartially hear the facts and decide this matter based on the evidence presented at this hearing. Next, I will ask for representatives of the owner or parties in interest to introduce yourself, including your name, address, and position. Is the owner, its owner, or its representatives present? Are any parties of interest or their representative present? Next, the procedure that the City Council will follow in conducting this hearing are as follows. Any documents to be used in this proceeding will be marked as an exhibit. I accept into evidence the Planning and Code Enforcement Department's previously provided exhibits A through I for 87 Summer Street. The presentation of evidence for this property will occur in the following order. City Planning and Code Enforcement Department staff will present an opening statement and relevant evidence regarding why they believe the structure at 87 Summer Street is a nuisance or dangerous building and what remedies the City Council shall order. City Council members can then ask questions of the Planning and Code Enforcement Department, another party, or witness. Each side can then make closing remarks of not more than 2 minutes each. Only parties to these hearings will be allowed to participate. Comments from the public will not be taken at this hearing. After all information has been presented, the record will be closed. The City Council will deliberate and take a vote on whether the structure in question is a threat to the public health and safety that requires prompt action. If the Council so determines, it shall deliberate and take a vote on the appropriate order to be made to remedy the situation. The City Council will deliberate and take a vote on whether the structure in question is a nuisance or dangerous building. If the City Council determines that the structure is a nuisance or dangerous building, it shall deliberate and take a vote on the appropriate order to be made to remedy the situation. This is an administrative hearing and not a court proceeding or trial. Therefore, the formal rules of evidence will not apply. As mayor, I will determine the appropriateness and admissibility of evidence on the advice of the city attorney. I now ask that the Lewiston Planning and Code Enforcement Department present the City Council with information relevant to this matter before it. And I know we were just here, but for the record, we have Council Mike Carey with us. And if you two can introduce yourselves again.
David Hediger, Director of Planning and Code Enforcement.
Travis Tardif, Lewiston Code Enforcement Officer.
On September 12, 2023, a notice of this hearing was recorded in the Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds in Book 11430, page 224, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit A. 87 Summer Street is identified as parcel ID RE00007945 on the City of Lewiston tax maps, a portion of which and property information for the parcel on which the structure is located in your packets as Exhibit B. The building at 87 Summer Street, which I will refer to as the structure, is a two-family residence and is owned by CC Property 2 LLC by virtue of a warranty deed recorded in the Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds on March 11, 2022, and is included in your packets as Exhibit C. On September 18, 2023, CC Property 2 LLC was served with a notice of hearing and the return of services in your packets as Exhibit D. Norman C. Torrey and Tammy J. Torrey are parties in interest regarding the structure by virtue of a memorandum of land installment contract, a copy of which is included in your packets as Exhibit E. On September 14, 2023, Norman C. Torrey was served with a notice of hearing, and that return of services in your packets as Exhibit F. On September 14, 2023, Tammy J. Torrey was served with a notice of hearing, and that return of services in your packets as Exhibit G. Once again, Travis is going to give a presentation on the conditions of the property.
So again, I'm Lewiston Code Enforcement Officer Travis Tardif, 6 years of experience as a code officer, just over 2 years with the city. In the following slideshow, which is included in your packets as Exhibit I will describe the conditions at 87 Summer Street that cause the structure to be dangerous or a nuisance. So the foundation wall on the right side of the building is collapsing. There are multiple holes in that foundation wall. Appearance of abandonment attracts transients looking for a place to sleep and live, possibly causing further deterioration and increasing the fire hazard. I do know that there have been transients in there in the past. There are not currently. Again, potential collapse hazard. The majority of the foundation damage is to the right side of the building. Building and detached garage are unsecured, and it is a severe health and safety hazard to anyone attempting to enter the structure due to dangerous and especially unsanitary conditions. It's unsuitable for the current residential use to which it is put. Again, the property is not being maintained. It's a nuisance due to abandonment. Buildings have remained unsecured since the condemnation. The third floor rear door is unsecure and unable to be shut. The garage door is barricaded open. First floor front window is unlocked and able to be opened from the outside. Potential for squatters and for animals and elements to enter the building and cause further deterioration. The roof was leaking for an indeterminate amount of time, so there's severe water damage in the building. It's been partially gutted due, I think, partly intentionally and partly due to water damage. And again, it's unsuitable right now for the use to which it is put. Extremely unsanitary conditions. There are multiple points where sewer gases are entering the building. It's infested with cockroaches, as you can see on the right-hand picture. Nuisance due to unsanitary conditions and health and safety hazard due to unsanitary conditions. Numerous electrical hazards. There's many bare ends. The picture on the left is an extension cord wired into a light fixture. Power cannot be turned on right now without entirely rewiring the house. The utilities are inadequate. Electrical panels are rusted due to moisture issues. The furnace is deteriorated and will need to be replaced. When we found the building, there was city water running directly into the basement. We requested that sewer and water have that shut off, which they did. This is an interior view of the two holes in the foundation. And as you can see kind of in the pictures, that whole wall is bulging in towards the center of the basement. And again, the holes allow the elements and the animals to enter, causing further deterioration. So in conclusion, the building qualifies as being dangerous due to severe structural damage due to deteriorating and collapsing foundation. The building qualifies as being a nuisance due to unsanitary and unsafe conditions. The building is unsecured. It is unsuitable for the residential use to which it is put. It constitutes a hazard to health and safety due to inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, obsolescence, and abandonment. It's dangerous to life and property, and it must be demolished. Some additional pictures. On the left is a broken window. The center is some haphazardly put together stairs. The right was something leaking out of an old shut refrigerator. On the left and the center is cockroach feces. They're attracted to the electricity before it was shut off. It just shows the extent of the infestation. And a few pictures from the basement just showing the dampness and the deterioration and the corroded wires. And these pictures were from today, showing that it is currently unsecure. So we request that the council conclude that the structure at 87 Summer Street must be secured because it poses a serious threat to public health and safety. And we request that the council conclude that it qualifies as a dangerous, or nuisance or dangerous building for the conclusions detailed in the PowerPoint, by which the structure meets every standard under the State of Maine Dangerous Building Statute. Any one of these reasons meets Maine law's standard for a nuisance or dangerous building. Together, they pose a greater danger to the public. We request the structure be demolished and removed.
Thank you both. We're now up to questions or questions from the council for planning and code. Anything else that you'd like to say?
It's time.
The record is.
Continue.
I appreciate that, Councilor LaChapelle. Madam Clerk, the record is now closed. Madam Clerk, can you please read the next order?
Sure. With regard to the property at 87 Summer Street, to adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and order of demolition proposed by the City Planning and Code Enforcement Department, which order established the corrective action to be taken by the property owner and the time frame for taking such action, and which authorized the city administrator to take such corrective action if the property owner fails to do so, and to recoup the city's costs through a special tax or collective action.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor LaChapelle, second by Councilor Pease. Further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Director Editor, Mr. Tardif, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I never want to know about cockroach feces again, I'm sorry. I didn't even know that existed.
We learn something new every day.
All right, you can move that, that's my seat over here, thank you, Mike. Yes, please, thank you.
One second, Madam Clerk, we're getting back into position here.
I'm ready.
We will all be ready momentarily. Counselor Scott? Madam Clerk, agenda item number 13.
Item number 13, Amendment 1 to the former Martel School option agreement between the City of Lewiston and Lewiston Auburn Area Housing Development Corporation. Requested action to authorize the city administrator to execute the option agreement, Amendment 1, between the City of Lewiston and Lewiston Auburn Area Housing Development Corporation that provides $200,000 for additional environmental remediation from the funding sources noted below, and includes new language which reimburses LAAHDC for all documented direct costs related to the remediation and demolition of the former Martel School in an amount in excess of $200,000. Funding sources: LHA Loan Repayment Special Revenue Fund, $50,000. General Fund fund balance, $150,000.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor Jelinas, seconded by Counselor Pease. And if you two can kick us off here.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, for being with us again today.
Sorry, if you can both introduce
Yes,
yourselves.
sorry. My name is Silas Levitt. I'm the Housing Development Project Manager for Lewiston Housing.
Chris Kilmurray, I'm the Executive Director of Lewiston Housing.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. We're here to discuss the possibility of the city assisting the Lewiston Housing Authority / LHADC with the demolition of the building on the Martel School lot to help pave the way to turn the lot into affordable senior housing. The planned demolition for the site has come back more expensive than anticipated, including approximately $200,000 in asbestos remediation and abatement costs. I'm now going to move through to kind of summarize what has been discussed previously. At earlier meetings this year, both in May and in January, February, it was agreed that the demolition would cost roughly $400,000. And at the planning board meeting on January 30th, it was stated that the asbestos in the school had been removed. Our demolition bid came back at roughly $600,000, and while significantly more than we had discussed, our board approved moving forward with the demolition. However, the hazardous building materials survey that we commissioned came back with findings that there was significant asbestos presence within the building, and that the abatement necessary to begin the demolition would cost roughly $200,000 extra. We had originally planned to carry that $400,000 cost of the demolition outside of the LIHTC deal with Maine Housing, and due to Maine Housing's total development caps, we cannot carry any of the additional $400,000 within the deal without making the project ineligible for tax credits. As our cost of demolition is now roughly double what it was initially estimated, we are looking to split the cost of the additional $400,000 with the city, and are asking for HUD CBG funding from the city or TIF to cover the $200,000 cost of the asbestos abatement, or what the city clerk said was going to be the funding designation. So all this was discussed at the previous council meeting, and we agreed for a 2-week break for LHA and the city staff to have more time for due diligence. One sort of additional possibility that we wanted to raise is that we're waiting on the findings of the Phase 2 EAS environmental survey of the site. Depending on those findings, which is currently being worked on, and we're expecting to come back sometime in mid-October, the project may be eligible for brownfield monies from Maine DEP, AVCOG, and or the EPA. So we would like to offer to the council that if the project is eligible for those brownfield monies, that we would pursue those funding opportunities, and any money gained would go first towards reimbursing the city for their $200,000 contribution to the asbestos abatement.
Thank you. Discussion from the council. Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be voting in favor of this requested action tonight. I mean, we know we've heard before us tonight, two market rate housing options, really important. This project is equally important, and also something that, the city of Lewiston needs for our seniors. And so, great to hear about this possibility with brownfield monies, but even if that didn't come through, I just want to put my vote of support out there for this project.
Thank you.
I appreciate the city and Lewiston Housing working together to get this done, so thank you. Public comment. Back to the council. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I support this project, I hate the city laying out any more money. I believe you stated that the extra money can't be carried because it's for abatement. Is that why it can't be carried into the
No,
project?
it can't be carried in the deal because Maine Housing has a cap on the total development cost for the project, and putting $400,000 into the deal would put us over the cap and make the project ineligible for tax credits.
So the budget is that tight?
That's correct.
And what happens when the construction costs are higher?
There's contingency built into it,
Yeah, we're required to build in at least 20% contingency.
but beyond that, their value engineering at that point in time would happen.
To cut the cost of the total project?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that changes things a little bit, but, okay, thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Would this mean that your acquisition cost for the property couldn't be carried by Maine Housing if the price were to be such that it were not what it is now? If that were to be increased, say, by $200,000?
Yeah, we can't fit any more into the deal right now. I mean, we're right on the edge.
Based on past history on this and some other things, I just have too many questions about the integrity of the presentation from Lewiston Housing. Fool me once, now you're trying to fool me twice, I don't know. I can't vote in favor of this, I'm sorry.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I do plan on voting in favor of this. I think this is a important investment in senior housing for our senior citizens in Lewiston. So I'm all in favor. Thanks.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you. Just for clarification, are you receiving grant for asbestos removal?
No, we're looking for it, and we said if we get any of that, we would apply it directly to the city's portion that we're asking for right now. So if we got 50, 100, whatever amount of money, if we got the full 200, if we got $200,000, that would go back to the city, we would carry the remainder of the 600.
Okay. So if you get the 200,000, let's think high, if you get the 200,000 and we move forward tearing it all down, if you don't exercise your option to move forward at the end, do you have to pay back that $200,000 grant?
No, because it went to remediating the process for the city. So it's improving the property so say we don't exercise the option or we don't complete the project and you guys take it back, that money, you still solve the problem. You got rid of that asbestos from there, and that's the DEP or the EPA's goal here. So there's no recapture from them.
I want to see this project move forward. We've said it every time. We're on the heels of two good ones. I want to continue this trend. I have concern on timelines and somebody pulling out of the project. That the city is taking risks, you're taking risks, Lewiston Housing, but it appears that the city's taken upon ourselves all the risks. If you pull out before the project starts, the city has to pay everything back. What kind of skin do you have in the game on this?
We've got a couple $100,000 in development costs related to engineering and architectural plans. So we've got a lot in the game here. We've got a lot of time into this, a significant amount of time into this. There's
3
a lot
years worth.
Yeah, there's a lot of skin in this game. We want to see this project just as much as you guys do.
So if I just want to find a way that we can get this blessed thing moving forward, and I don't want, to see, and how can we come to a point that we're moving forward and something happens and Lewiston Housing says, no, we're pulling back, and we're not going to move forward, and here's a bill to the city of Lewiston for $600,000.
That's actually not how it works, though, how it's written, just so you guys know.
Okay.
If you decide you don't want to take it back, you don't have to. And so there's no bill that goes back to you at that point in time. If you just say, I don't want the property, we own the bill, and that's it. We own the piece of land, and that's fine. So there's really there's no mechanism for us to say you owe us money. The mechanism is in your court to say, we want the property back, and you'd be paying for the improvements to the property that you would have had to pay anyway, which you said you wanted to have done because of insurance reasons related to the property's structural integrity.
So if you don't meet the timeline, so that's probably a better statement. If you don't meet the timeline, and
You
not
decide.
you personally, so don't, if the timeline's not met, Lewiston Housing's dragging their feet, they're working on, let's say.
Well, let me be clear, we'd never be dragging our feet to not do this. We're trying to move forward to make this happen. There's no foot dragging happening here.
If I can just let the counselor finish, and then
Yeah,
we can
sorry.
respond. Thank you.
I'm just trying to find a way that I don't want to be stuck on a $600,000 bill 2 years down the road, and we're no further ahead on a development. So help me figure out how we can get through this, whereas if you're not meeting timelines, that barring any unforeseen, crashes into the earth and blah, 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 I just don't feel comfortable. There's I don't want to say this, I just want to see this moving forward with everybody wants the same thing. We don't want to take the property back. We want you to have it. You're doing a good job, but I don't want to wait another 2 years to get something going. And I'm concerned on waiting another 2 years that we're all sitting back here again doing the same thing. That's a big concern of mine.
So the only thing I could offer to that is saying the same thing in a slightly different way, is that we don't want to be stuck with a $800,000 bill either. And if you decide not to take the property back, we're still holding that $600,000 plus all the engineering costs. We have a lot of skin in the game should you decide that you don't want to do that. Now, we have just as much incentive moving forward on this project as the city does in wanting us to move forward. We have a lot of skin in the game because you hold the card to say, we want the property back, we don't want the property back, and we would never want to just sit on an $800,000 investment. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that this moves forward and that gets recouped.
Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify things, if the worst happens and you don't go forward, we're only going to be billed for the cost of demolition and remediation, none of your other costs.
Correct.
So just what it would have cost us anyway to tear it down.
Correct.
The only problem is we're 2 years out and all the promises we made to our constituents are gone by the wayside. But as far as a monetary standpoint, it's sort of a moot point.
You're paying for the improvements to the property, what you would have done either way. That's
But
all.
no property taxes, none of that?
Nope.
Okay, just your remediation and demolition?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to say that, I understand there's been some delays, and, there's certainly some disagreement on what constitute those delays, but we have a way forward right now. It's agenda item number 13, and I appreciate the work that you've done and the work that city administration has done to get to this point. And, yeah, I would urge the council to vote this forward without delay. Councilor Clement.
Mr. Mayor, just to the point of my vote, I'm not voting against this project. 4 years ago, Councilor Jelinas and myself were instrumental in moving this project forward nearly in its present state. We turned down a couple of other proposals, one of which would have gathered quite a bit more money for the city, one of which would have probably cost us a lot more money for the city. But it was all about senior housing. I'm all for senior housing. My only problem has been with the history that we've had, particularly with one gentleman that's before us now, and I have no trust in him. I am for the project. I will not vote against the project, but I can't vote for it. I will abstain when it comes my turn. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, have we been to public comment for this?
We have not, no.
Okay. We're now heading to public comment for this.
We did.
We're back to the council. Yes. Administrator Hunter?
Yes, with the new information that if the brownfield grant that was applied for is received, that we would get paid for first, we probably need to do some sort of an amendment, whether it be friendly or formal, that adds the, if a brownfield project, or if brownfield funds are received, the city will be reimbursed for the $200,000 first from the funds that grant funds received, or something to that language we can.
I would propose that friendly amendment.
And I'll second that.
Okay, I guess we're.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
now incorporated, thank you. Councilor LaChapelle?
Just one other question. I asked you last meeting on the ability to have more Lewistonians living there. Is that wording any place in here?
Yeah,
or
it's
is
in
this-
our, not in here, it's in our plan. So for all the subsidized units, we are allowed to make sure that the subsidized units, and the project-based units are Lewiston people that go into those units.
Okay, thank you.
Before we vote, if I could just add one other thing, and I want to first say, I'm super excited about what Jason's doing in the downtown. I think that plan looks awesome. And I'm super excited that you guys are moving in that direction and doing what you're doing with this omnibus TIF. I just saw this for the first time. I hadn't read through the materials beforehand, but, we're only asking, equivalency of a 50%. If our taxes are estimated to be at $40,000 and we're looking for $200,000, it's the equivalent of a 50% TIF for 10 years. And you guys are looking to do something similar, a project downtown at 52% TIF for 30 years is what it works out to be. So, it's similar on total dollars, but ours is going to be front loaded and it's going to pay back. The ROI on ours with taxes will be roughly 5 years where that's paid back at $40,000. And that's only phase one. If we get a phase 2 and a phase 3, like we've talked about, those taxes will be up to $120,000 within a short period of time. So this is money well spent to be able to get us to the point where we can get this out of the ground, have it operationally work, fit within the main housing guidelines, and it fits very well within the same confines of the conversation that you just had to move forward with Jason's deal in that whole area of downtown, which, again, is awesome. I love it. Can't wait to see it come out of the ground. That is a highly underutilized space, and it's going to be great.
And thank you for that. And if this project, when this project gets done, and if I'm still mayor, I will make sure that this is the biggest ribbon cutting that we've ever had. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. So that means you guys won't be before us asking for a TIF with this project?
No. We already said when we started this project the first time that we're on the books. We put in TIF depending on how you wanted to handle this $200,000. We put TIF in there along with the CDBG funds depending on how you wanted to fund this particular.
Okay,
piece.
so that will be the maximum of your ask, is
Yes.
what you're saying.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back to time framing, the 200,000 is approved tonight. When do we expect to see anything happening there?
It's going to be, I believe we said March is when the choice limiting actions end on the property?
Yeah, so it's dependent on the process for main housing with the 9% tax credit round, which we applied for a week or two ago. So main housing is going to make their decision regarding that funding round in November. Once they make their decision, if we are approved for the 9% funding round, they'll have to do a HUD environmental review on the property, and that they estimated would take another 2 or 3 months. So we'd be looking at the demolition starting in February or March. If we're not approved for the 9% funding round, we'll be applying for the 4% funding round with subsidy, which main housing is estimated will come out sometime in December. Therefore, we could start the demolition in November because we wouldn't be subject to choice limiting actions.
Thank you. I'm just, want to see this thing get going. And I know there's a lot of hoops to jump through and dot I's and T's, but we got to get moving. Thank you.
Procedural question.
Councillor Clement, did you have something else?
Yes, procedural question. We have an amendment on this now, a friendly amendment. That means we do not vote on the friendly amendment. That's part of the main motion now?
I believe that's correct. Madam Clerk?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Based on the fact that the friendly amendment is now in place and the likelihood of us having to expend the funds has been, I think, reduced, I will vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to be voting now. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Counselor from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Chris.
We are now up to reports and updates. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick report. We had a school committee meeting last night. It was a very short meeting. The superintendent did bring up and recognize all the staff that was helpful in cleaning up Longley School in the most recent incident that has happened, which is very unfortunate. We also had an update from the principal at Lewiston High School about Lewiston High School vision of the graduate. Now, this is something that I kind of got excited about. This was a...
Can you repeat that?
It's
The
called
Lewiston?
Lewiston High School Vision of the Graduate. It's actually asking the students what their vision is of being a graduate of Lewiston High School. What do they want? Questions like, what does success look like for you after high school? What do you feel you need to be a successful graduate? What would you like to add for knowledge? Are there pieces of information that you feel are missing to become a graduate? This is also work that's being done with staff and faculty and with our next step staff. I found this amusing that one of the things that, as all the students worked on this, they said that one of the things they like to see added is classes on taxes. And I thought, well, God, I think we all would have liked to have that. I think that's actually a good thing to have. So I think this is really good work that the high school is looking forward to doing. They're just in the beginning process. This was the question stages, and now they're going to be working on evaluations and how to move forward with some of this information that they receive to use it towards improving our graduations and making sure that we have students that are graduating at a level that they feel comfortable moving forward with their future. So that was a good thing. We had reports and updates, then we went into executive session, and that was the end of the school committee meeting. It was a very short meeting. That's all I have.
Councillor Jelinas?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that the Lewiston Area Public Health Committee hosted the 3rd annual Rally for Recovery. I was honored to MC that this past Saturday. I want to do a shout out of thanks to Dottie Parham-Whittier, who is like the organizer behind this, did so much. Lewiston Public Works showed up in just numbers and really helped this event be successful, as did the Lewiston Police Department. It was great. We had a host of speakers. We had folks sharing family experiences. We had folks sharing their recovery journeys. We had over 30 tables of resources from the community, just really trying to educate folks about substance misuse and recovery. And so, it was well attended, and there was just a lot of great participation, really good energy. I want to thank Councillor Scott and Harriman and Mayor Shalene for being there alongside me and showing support. And I also want to just thank all the sponsors of this event. It was really a lot of fun to do.
Mr. Gallant as well.
Yes, and that's right, Tim Gallant's in our audience tonight. And I'm going to pick on you and say thank you for all Pathway Vineyard Church did and all that you did with your group.
I'd also like to add that Councillor Scott was also in attendance.
Yes, I was. Yeah, she said that.
She
did?
did?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, she said that.
Further reports and updates? We're now up to new business. Sorry, Councillor Jelinas?
New business?
Are we finished with reports and updates?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We are now up to new business. Councillor Jelinas?
In correspondence from Representative Clucci, it's been brought to our attention that Maine Housing is accepting applications for communities in need of warming centers this winter, and Lewiston is very much in need of this. I think about what happened, last winter, and this is an opportunity for us to really do something in a more coordinated way. The deadline for the application is October 13th. I'm hopeful that my colleagues will join me in asking administration to submit an application. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. So I have a statement I want to make this evening. When I first heard that 4 city councilors met outside of council chambers and discussions were had not only about city business but also executive session information only the school committee should know, I thought they wouldn't be so brazen. They have continued to deny meetings as a group outside of council meetings, even as recently as a few days ago, as written in an article by the Maine Monitor. It was not only Josh Negin that reached out to me, and I believe that he sent an email out this evening to everybody as well as the administration on a statement that he wanted to make about this meeting. But since that, in the last week, nearly a dozen community members have either called me or stopped me to say they heard that 4 members of the council had met at the Cage after last week's joint planning board and council meeting. Not only does this go against Maine statute for public meetings, in my opinion, it brushes the line of moral turpitude, a removable offense by our charter. We swore an oath. We raised our right hand and swore to uphold our Constitution, Maine laws, and our charter. We signed freedom of information requirements. I took that oath very seriously. I question sometimes whether others on this dais hold the same. It seems to me that it's rules for thee, not for me, that come to my mind. So tonight, as City Council President, I am formally asking our city administrator to bring our city attorney into this matter and look into the possible violation of Maine open meeting laws, Maine freedom of information laws, and the possibility of a censure, as I believe you committed moral misconduct outside a public meeting, a censurable offense. I want the attorney involved because we all know that you don't think you are doing anything wrong, and apparently you don't have the ability, as our city administrator has suggested, to govern ourselves. As that requires a majority of vote to have a censure, I want the attorney involved. The citizens of this city deserve an answer for this, and I will stand up for that and want a formal opinion from our city attorney, and I would hope that we could have an executive session and it be put on a meeting sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am extremely upset about Councillor Scott's remarks. I didn't realize she's been brought in as a political hack to attack the people on the council. The reality is we checked with Administrator Hunter before we did this.
Councillor McCarthy, if you just lower your voice just a little bit. Thank you.
My Irish is going. We checked with city administrator. She said that as long as we announced it to everybody and invited everybody to go, that we were fine in what we did. Now, some of the things that we've been accused of talking about, the reality is we figured that some people would want to attack us on this. Some of the information that Councillor Scott accosted us of, for instance, the number of dismissals or suspensions or expulsions. Superintendent Langlays is the one that quoted that in one of the meetings. So to throw that at us, like we talked to someone individually and got that information from the school committee, is bogus. And then some of the other conversations, it was just a plant to see what would happen. And so now we know who we can trust. We can't trust Josh Negin, who will be a councilor coming up next year. We can't trust Amy Smith, who's on the planning board, because she tried to get us first thing the next morning. And then we can't trust our council president. a council president who I voted for, a council president who I was the swing vote to get her on the school committee. And now she's using her position with the opposition to attack us 4 weeks before the election to try to sway the vote away from 3 of the councilors that are running for re-election. And that is appalling. That is totally appalling. Now, we've had issues with people on the school committee, and what did we do? We sent letters to the superintendent. We didn't come to public meetings and berate them in front of audiences just to sway votes. We didn't do that. We took the opportunity to reach out to the superintendent and do it that way, so that it was handled properly and that whatever happens, happens. But that's not the case here. It was a big splash. I don't know if she's running for election to the House next year and she's currying favor with that side of the aisle. I don't know. But something is going on, and I think it's appalling at how she's attacking us. And I am disgusted with everything. All of the things that she said about us talking behind our backs and all of that, well, what just happened? They all talked behind their backs, not in public, and then now it comes out as an accusation in public. So I am fully disgusted with this whole process, and I am so upset that I chose to support you the way I did. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I just want to point out that you don't make a public meeting by just telling people, a few minutes beforehand and then inviting them. That's not how the law works. Just because we were invited to that meeting, all 8 of us, that doesn't make it a public meeting. It has to be advertised to the public with an agenda and everything. So I'm just really disappointed that this continues.
We're just going to go around the table here. Councilor LaChapelle, did you have something?
Oh, yes, I do. Thank you. It's ironic that instead of a phone call to some of the other councilors saying, hey, what's going on, or whatever, that this is brought up like this. We did something that's a long-held tradition in the city of Lewiston. We can go back. Mayor Hawanik stood at that podium and said, after the council meetings, we all went down to the bar and had drinks. I can quote the last, I don't want to know the immediate last 2, but the ones prior to that, that was a very common occurrence, going down, socializing. We had an opportunity with the planning board that we haven't had. I thought we had a great working relationship with the planning board, and then we can move forward and celebrate some of our victories that we've accomplished in the city of Lewiston, and to break bread and just to socialize. Sadly, only 2 of them came. Councilor Harriman looked at me at a meeting and said, oh, I'm sorry, I was hoping to make it down. I couldn't make it that day, that night. That's fine. This was open to all to come. It was open to you, Councilor Scott, also. I'm very disappointed. I would concur with my esteemed colleague from Ward 2 in regard to how this is played out. For a moment, I heard what you did at the school board meeting last night. I was kind of in hopes that you were going to keep this under wraps and just move forward knowing that this is a non-issue. This is a non-issue. And if it needs a vote, am no way in favor of expending any resources for a city attorney to move forward on it. And I'm sure I can gather 3 more votes to prevent that from happening. This is ridiculous. This is politicking to the most. And I'm so disappointed in you, Councilor Scott. I thought you had risen over this level, and I gained a certain amount of respect. And now I see this as all in loss. This is nothing new that hasn't happened for years in the city of Lewiston. When I was appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals, we'd all go down to O'Shields after. The planning board would go down. This has just been a common occurrence, and we're in open public. Anybody could stand around and hear anything that was going on. And I guess my other question is, was there anything that said was inaccurate? Was there anything said, is it true what some of the things were said? This is just politics at the worst, and I thought you were better than that.
Did you have, we're just going to go down the line here. Did you have anything to say, Councilor Pease? If you can use the mic.
What I would have to say should not be said in public. Plain and simple. I'm getting tired and very upset having to put up with this crap my whole term. I've been accused of several different things, all not true. I've kept my tongue. I'm not going to say anything.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask Councilor Scott if she would like to name the individuals and what she thinks was done wrong, but I caution Councilor Scott that you make these accusations in public, you may pay dearly for them. You can be removed from the council presidency on a mere 4 votes. We could remove you from the council on 5 votes. I don't know that we have those in either instance or not. But this is political grandstanding, the same thing I accused you of not too terribly long ago. I don't know what kind of games you're playing. It started back in January. On a Friday, before we had our first meeting on January, you and I conversed on the telephone. I don't even remember what the matter was. But you told me, you have my full support as council president. Come our meeting the next Tuesday, find out you had colluded with the mayor, the councilor from Ward 3, and a city employee to run for council president. Great. It took me out of the loop, which I appreciate. I no longer have to have those Tuesday morning meetings, okay? But this is politics at its worst. And I want to caution you that you want to be very careful where you step, madam, because I have teeth, and I will bite back. I thank you very much.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Can we have a point of order, Councilor Herman?
Could we refrain from the threats, please?
That's not a threat, Councilor, that's a promise.
Councilors,
And refrain from the promises.
Councilors, thank you. Yes, I would like to continue to speak calmly. Councilor Jelinas.
I don't really have a whole lot to say, except that for folks that know me, they know I don't have a political bone in my body. So this is not, quite frankly, this is just more of the same that I have grown very tired of. And it's not just pointed in one direction. It's gone on both ways very significantly for my entire second term here. I don't know that I have anything constructive to add to this, except that while this feels sort of one-sided tonight, it's, from my point of view, again, I don't care if you're an R, you're D, you're red, you're blue, I don't care. It's not where it's not of interest to me. But I will say that this just feels like more of the same, and I don't really have a whole lot to add, except that I think it's really divisively sad, and I just would rather speak about things that really, can we talk about perhaps, setting up a warming shelter? Can we talk about some things that the city needs? That's really where I want to spend my energy. Thank you.
For the record, I did not know that Councilor Scott's nomination would be put forward for council president. We're going to come back around here. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. Neither did I know that I was going to be put up for nomination that evening, and there was no collusion. I find it quite amusing, the hypocrisy that's being spewed around this evening. And once again, I will just reiterate that I believe that corporate counsel needs to look into this, because the reality is that 4 councilors, no matter whether it happened in the past or anything, have been meeting, and I believe have been meeting more often than not. This is not about politics for me. I'm not running again. Actually, I'm probably moving away from the community. And you know nothing about my private life or what I'm doing in the future. But I have very serious concerns about this city. I have very great passion about this community. It's why I've done everything I've done for the last 12 years for this city. And I'm very much in favor of rules of governance and our swearing of oaths and our Constitution and Maine law. And the fact of the matter is that by Robert's Rules of Order and Maine law, if there is a quorum that meets outside of city council chambers and any discussion is had, whether it's about a statement about CMP or it's conversations around zoning or Martel School or Maine Inside Out or executive session information about that's happening at the school department, those are things that should not be happening. It matters not, again, what political party you're at. And we are supposed to make sure that we are the voice of all the people of this community, and no particular group of members should be speaking just for themselves about things and then not having a public process with that. That is what I'm fighting here. That is what I'm calling out, and I will stand by that till the day I die. And you know what? I have teeth too.
Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The whole idea behind that meeting, like Councilor LaChapelle said, was to talk to the planning board members. Considering Josh Negin was going to be the councilor replacing Councilor Scott, we were discussing his thoughts on what's going on in the world. I mean, CMP is a big thing, big ticket item. It's not anything to do with council business. It was just his thoughts on whether it should happen or whether it shouldn't. That's what we were asking. We wanted to get a good idea, seeing as there's a good possibility we need to work together in January, that we talked to get his thoughts on everything. And to turn around and throw us under the bus just goes to show where he stands. And everyone knows that the people that are against us are from the other side of the aisle. They've never agreed with us. They've accused us over and over and over again of meeting outside of here. You know, I guess telephones don't work. Text messaging doesn't work. And to take the innocent concept of trying to feel out our future counselor on his thoughts and now we got legal involved and it's all out there in the public trying to steer the election. It's disgusting. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. I just want to point out that it is okay for a group of counselors to meet outside of a public meeting so long as they don't discuss public business. There's a difference between socializing, you know, having a beer, discussing the Red Sox or whatever, and conducting city business and discussing items that are in front of the city or could be in front of the city. I was at an event the day after this meeting with Councilor McCarthy, Councilor LaChapelle. Regarding CMP, Councilor LaChapelle told me they discussed a council resolve in support of CMP regarding question 3 this fall. So how is that not city business? You know, it came straight from him. As far as phones and text messages, if a quorum of this council is meeting outside, it doesn't matter if you're all in the same room. If you're all on the phone together, or you're phoning each other and coordinating, or you're texting each other and coordinating, that still constitutes a quorum meeting and conducting city business outside of the public eye. I mean, the fact that this is coming out in this way, I think somebody mentioned, why wasn't it a phone call? You've been called out on this over and over and over the past 2 years. You were called out at our last meeting, and then you immediately went out and met again. You did it again. I mean, the people of Lewiston deserve a lot better than this. We should be committed to conducting their business publicly and openly and transparently. And the fact that you continue to refuse to do that, it just shows that you have a really deep disrespect for the democratic process and for our constituents. It's just really disappointing that this behavior continues over and over. Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle?
And this is a typical fashion that Councilman Harriman does. It comes out with this very monotone voice and lies through his teeth.
We're just going to be talking
Point of
about
order.
people and
I'm
just...
finishing what my sentence is because he called me out on a statement that he made.
Point of
And I
order.
followed- There's no,
One second. Yes, Councilor Harriman?
Could we refrain from the personal attacks, please?
no.
I
believe
No, we're-
I'm making a statement.
Whether
I'm
I-
making a statement.
Counselors, 1 second, I'm going to talk. So we can certainly talk about actions and things that people said, but I do not want, there to be personal attacks. I think
Mr. Mayor, I make
there's
the
a line
motion
in-
to adjourn, please.
I have not recognized anyone else to speak yet. 1 second. So I think, yes, I think we can talk about issues and we can talk about actions, but no, I do not want there to be personal attacks.
Okay, I'm glad that's
Please-
not what you want.
please
This is what
continue.
happened at a meeting when Councilman Harriman just said that a resolution was drafted or something to that effect, and that wasn't the case at all. And it's just a narrative that, trying to change a narrative to move his very left-leaning theory forward. So, and I just wanted to clarify that. And second, I want to apologize to the staff and to the 4 other people in the room that this is pure crap that we shouldn't have to be sitting at and doing this. I will almost second her motion on this because this is ridiculous. We can go on, we're a bunch of grown adults, and obviously we can't play well in a sandbox together. Obviously, we're not going to agree on just about anything, and just move forward and let the voters decide which way we seem to be going. Because this is not good for our city. This is not good for anything. Us sitting up here like a bunch of 7th graders whining like this. And I want to make clear that I am not in favor of expending any resources for this foolishness. And if that requires a motion, we'll make a motion to suspend the rules and make the motion. So I just want to make sure we're not moving down this road. So I don't know how that works. The council president made a request. She has the authority to ask for an opinion from the attorney. Does she have the authority to, this is a question for administration, does she have the authority, the council president, have the authority to demand an investigation of some sort?
I asked for an opinion. I didn't demand an investigation.
The council president has the ability to contact legal counsel directly.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I'll second her motion.
Uh,
I would object to that, Mr. Mayor. We haven't all been heard a second way around the table.
Fair enough. I withdraw the second, just.
Okay. Councilor Peace, would you?
I'm getting ready to go home because this is nonsense. This is childish, irresponsible bickering for no reason.
Thank you. Councilor Clement, would you like to add anything?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, there's been accusations made that laws have been broken. Not the case, not the case at all. I would agree with the gentleman from Ward 4 that we need not expend money on this, and I think that a vote of the council could prevent an executive session by majority vote from happening in this regard. We might take up some other items at that meeting, but I'm not in favor of it. This is grandstanding at its worst. It happened at the school committee last night or whenever it was, recently. Somebody pointed out to me at minute 34, section 10, whatever it was, and sent me a link. I looked at that, oh, pretty much the same speech that was made here tonight. I came into this meeting, and I will admit that I was at this meeting. I don't recall any city business being discussed. By city business, I mean those things in which we are acting upon. Okay, we can talk about, well, if the folks in Washington talk about the weather when they meet. Okay, you believe that? Do I believe that? Doesn't make any difference what we believe. That's what they say. In this case, there was a discussion, or there was something passed around the table about CMP, and my recollection was, how do you people feel about this pine tree power thing? I think they went around the table and talked about it. I do remember that I made some comments about how disappointed I was that the corridor didn't get passed, because that meant a tremendous loss of revenue for the city of Lewiston. And now that that was back on the table, I hope that pine tree power didn't get passed. That's my personal feeling, and certainly I have a right to my own opinion and my own personal feelings, because for the very reason that if that passes, that's probably going to kill whatever would have happened with the revenue from the corridor situation, our converter station. So I don't recall anybody putting forth any political business of the city at this meeting at the time that I was there. But I would caution anybody that wants to accuse me of a criminal act, they better have their ducks in a row. And I thank you very much, sir.
Councilor Giants, did you have anything else? Okay. Councilor Harriman, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to say, I know we don't always agree on policy, but I hope we could at least agree on our rules of governance and our charter and, you know, governing openly and with the people's business at the top of our mind. Yeah, that's all I have right now. I have one more item after this. I do have one more.
Councilor Harriman, please continue.
Once we're finished with this item.
Oh, you have other?
Other business.
I see. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, yeah, hold on. So, yeah, no, I appreciate you checking in with the attorney. I've been the recipient. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the people have been meeting outside of council, and I've been the recipient of many of those resulting actions, and so I appreciate that. Sorry, Councilor Harriman, did you have something else unrelated to the current discussion?
Yes, I wanted to recognize also that October is National Bullying Prevention Month. And yesterday was the 17th Annual World Day of Bullying Prevention. So just for the month of October. Thanks.
Any other new business before the council? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So may already.
You have been now, Councilor Pease.
Second.
And we have a second by Councilor LaChapelle. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7? Yes. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.